I think we can begin with the first presentation on the campus development plans by Dr. Bimal Patel.
Thank you everybody for coming. Shirayu said there is a lot of interest in this presentation. I'm very glad that there is a lot of interest. We're going to have 3 presentations today, so it's a long session. I'm going to start off with something about the campus development plans, what the expansion plans for the campus are over the coming 4 or 5 years, and a few other issues that I want to touch upon. Following me, Professor Gurdev Singh, who is designing our new workshop, will tell you about the workshop design. I think by that time, everybody will be ready to ask questions. Actually, so we will take a few questions at that stage. Then I will request Rahul to update us on some interiors and final things on the library, but more importantly about the plaza. And that's what he's going to tell us about. We'll end with a question-answer session that I will moderate, and I welcome you all once again. Let me get going with the presentation about campus development plans. So let me start out by talking about the charms of CEPT Campus. Many of you here are like this campus, like me, and many of you are alums of CEPT University and are well aware of the charms of our campus. We have many, many positive things going for our campus. First of all, it's extremely well located in the middle of the city. Really, without such a location, we could not have such a vibrant teaching community at CEPT, and that's really important. We're in the proximity of many great educational institutions like IIM and Atira and various other institutions. Next door to us, a new university is coming up, which is Ahmedabad University, and that's also very important because as we go forward, we should see more and more synergy between these institutions. So that's very good. We have ample land. Now, ample, I know, means different things to different people. When we, in 2012, when we got going on campus improvements, we had about 8.5 acres of land. Some of you might remember the campus in this. The blue area is all ours, in a sense, and the sort of yellow area is some other institutions like Kanoria Center, Hati Singh Center, CSC, and the Gufa. Okay, but at that time we had 8.5 acres. Then as Ahmedabad University started getting planned, we got a little bit more land. Presently we are using about 11.7 acres in the middle of the city. And finally, as Ahmedabad University develops, we think we will have about 18 acres of land that we will be able to use. This is quite a bit of land when you consider that it is center city land. We have some really inspiring architecture on the campus, and that I don't need to labor the point. All of us know that we have some really inspiring marvels and jewels of 20th century architecture. We have some beautiful trees on campus. All of us have sat under these trees and enjoyed the beauty of these trees. We have lovely landscapes. Many of our spaces overlook beautiful landscapes, and we use them in a variety of ways. The architecture of our campus is enlivened by many unprogrammed spaces. That's really very important because these unprogrammed spaces are used in multiple ways. Here, for example, I don't know, maybe this was for a jury or a Kurulavarki forum or something like this. So that's really one of the big charms of our campus. We shouldn't lose that as we go along. It's enlivened by student work. When somebody comes here, they're really inspired and sort of taken up by all the things that students do that are displayed on the walls and temporary things that we put up. And it's really great traditions of doing that on the campus. The campus, in some sense, is part of the pedagogy of this place. We use it to teach. People sketch it, and people, the landscape people look at the trees, etc. The campus is also enlivened by many activities and festivities throughout the year, and that's some great traditions of doing that here. It's a campus that is alive in alumni memories. Many of us were required to draw the buildings, sketch them out in our drawing painting classes, and in some sense it's almost got etched into our memories. This is a picture from the SA50 event, and many of the people came here, and part of the joy was just coming back to something that you remember. Okay, and on a more personal note, this is when my batch was studying here. At that time, the Visual Arts Center had just been built, and we used to play Itti on the. Rahul, I believe, also played Itti. I don't think it's a big tradition any longer, but it's alive in student memories. That was me on the campus out there. The guy in the checkered shirt is me. Once again. The campus, it's a campus that has evolved over a period of time. Okay, this is not a campus as you see it. Many of you might be seeing it just now and think or know it for the last 5 years, and you might think that this is all always been there, and it's not always been there. We famously started in a log cabin. Sorry, not a log cabin. We started in a badminton hall. That was located here. It was a small place that, and there are some people here today, I think, who probably remember the badminton hall. We have Vivek Khadpekar here, and he's nodding vigorously, saying, "I studied in that." Then we got given some land in this area, which used to be old brick kiln, and this rectangle I'm going to turn around like that, and the first FA building was built. And at that time, this was a brick kiln, and this little building there, as you can see here, this is what was built. This was the construction office for that, construction workshop for that, a small canteen here, I remember that one. Community Science Center was built afterwards. Following that, we had an east extension here. In the 70s, when I just joined this Visual Arts Center was being added to the campus here. That amphitheater wasn't there. That came afterwards. This is not a perfect history, but I'm just putting together how it evolved. Even while we were there in the early 80s, this library and administration building was built. A experimental NBO building was built here. Subsequently, later in the 80s, the Faculty of Technology building was built, and this used to be known as the I don't remember now. These are CBRI labs. Yeah, that's where the experimental lab was. It was not meant to be an office in any case. Then subsequently in the 90s, or perhaps in the late 80s, maybe I'm getting it wrong, the Faculty of Design building was built. Krishna Ben played a major role in that. The FD workshops were built here. The South Gate was built, the North Gate, and a lot of little, itsy bitsy pieces. The Kanoria Center was added afterwards. And then in the 2000s, this east extension was put up here, which we see just now, all those wires hanging there and all those ACs, etc. That was all at that time. The famous third bay was done here, and that's the electrical substation, etc. It's an evolving campus that has been built. Then finally NZEB and this little sustainable architecture building was built afterwards. It's been built over a long period of time. It's been evolving continuously, and that in some sense, its continuous change is also a part of this campus. Okay. Besides the charms of CEPT Campus, it's a charming campus, there are very, very many positive things about it, but there's also a legacy of problems at CEPT Campus that we must keep clearly in mind as we go ahead. First of all, we had a major expansion of academic activities. You can see here that in the 80s, we were about 500 students, here 90s, and suddenly 1,000 students got added to CEPT, and we were, suddenly, but no commensurate increase in facilities at that time at all. So we were all just packing more and more people into the same amount of spaces that we had. And presently we are about 1,600 students in more or less the facilities that were meant for 500 students. Okay. I remember the campus, and many of us here who are here remember it as a campus with just 200 people. So for us, this is incredibly dense and unbelievably inefficient in many ways. There was many unplanned expansion, increase in non-academic activities, lots of consulting activities, and the staff for consulting activities and the activities themselves got added into the little spaces that we had. As a consequence of this, everything was jam-packed and very, very poorly utilized in some ways. So, but there was no facilities expansion. So lack of facilities is a legacy problem for us. We had absolutely no system for campus planning in place. I mean, most of the additions, therefore, when in 2012, there was not even a set of drawings of CEPT Campus. When we started to look for For a campus that is an architecture and planning campus, it's amazing. There was not even a single drawing of the campus as a whole. Therefore, there was no system of planning. And the lack of planning has resulted in the services being very poorly done, ad hoc additions, and actually, Rahul will talk a little more about it, very, very poor layout of facilities. Really not using the opportunities that the buildings provide to be able to connect each other and all the marvelous architectural possibilities there. So extremely poor layout of facilities as a consequence of really poor planning system in place there. We had very poorly defined boundaries. This was a real problem at CEPT. We have these institutions whose jurisdictions are poor. They say good fences make good neighbors. You must have properly defined boundaries. You can't just let any institution grow. And many of us here have been long enough here to see what the problems of these poor jurisdictions is. Basically lots of frictions between the institutions about how to use this place. We had a completely opaque system for managing campus expansion and development. Many of you who have been here recently might think that it's a long, old tradition to have the designs explained, people to participate in designing, people to participate in defining the requirements, people to participate in fixing budgets. You might think that this is a long tradition. It's just 2 years old. Okay, it's no more than that. Before that, things got built. Nobody knew who was building them, and they just got built. What was to be built, how was to be built, which is why many of the expansions are pretty ad hoc here. We have great quality, inspiring architecture, but we have extremely poor architecture on campus also. We have architecture that simply is inexcusable. Things that flood all the time. I have constantly, every 6 months, complaints from many of the students who are not in some of the charming buildings, talking about how it's impossible to study here, how it's impossible to work in an environment where you sweat so much. I've had teachers telling me, I get drenched. Would you expect me to lecture in this place? Things like that. We have extremely poor quality, legacy of extremely poor quality faculty offices. Famously unlockable, romanticized as being unlockable and open, but that means that you cannot keep your computers there. You cannot walk in and out of your office. That means that the faculty member prefers to work at home instead of working here. Uncomfortable teaching environments, uncomfortable working environments, extremely poor administrative facilities. You can see those files stacked up there, and it's a wonder that even a few of the records have survived over a period of time. Extremely difficult to maintain. Every monsoon, we have problems of flooding, okay, and this in a campus that teaches architecture and planning. This is ridiculous. So this is not something. We have a culture of making ad hoc and thoughtless additions. Here's a brilliant one, okay, where you can see, skylight and teach work facility and staircase. Culture of making completely unaesthetic choices of this sort, additions of this sort. Look at the building and the state in which it is, and look at the things that have been stuck on top. This is a legacy problem. You have a legacy of making really poor quality architecture. Culture of buying very ugly and very uncomfortable furniture. Okay, this in a school of design. Who bought this? This is the sort of question that anybody would ask if they came here. The worst thing, and here I take a breath to say this, because an acceptance of shabby and an unclean campus, a culture of almost, in some places even romanticizing the shabbiness that had become a part of this place. Really no investment in upkeep and no investment in ensuring that it is a clean campus. Okay, day-to-day maintenance, proper repairs. This is what distinguishes our institutions from efficient institutions the world over. And we had a fantastic culture of doing exactly the opposite, and more importantly, of romanticizing it. Okay, and this really gets my goat, because when additions like this were made, such as this toilet that you can see, this blue one is actually a toilet, a a lean-to roof next to the office building so that a toilet could be made. All the staff went out, including, the director goes out and goes into the toilet there. I mean, this and complete apathy from the CEPT community. All the people who see these ad hoc additions, who see this ad hoc and unaesthetic, facilities that are created, just relaxed and sort of enjoying that, or not at all complaining about these sort of things. And that apathy was perhaps the worst aspect of the culture that had developed here. Okay, so to start off, we said, okay, we got to fix this, and we got to fix it in a nice sort of way. Okay, so when we started off, and a lot of people were involved in trying to figure out how are we going to get this ship back on track, how are we going to make this function better. And we asked a number of questions, and I want to lay them out once again. And we said, how are we going to fix, upgrade, expand CEPT Campus as we go ahead? These were the sort of discussions we were having already in 2012. We asked two fundamental questions. What should the architectural character of CEPT Campus be? Okay, and we said, how should campus improvements and developments be managed? These were the two key questions that we wanted to ask. And I think many of you, I think the answers to it in some sense are inevitable. Let's take up this. What should the architectural character of CEPT Campus be like? Obviously, we must have an architecture that inspires. You cannot, one of the finest aspects that makes CEPT is the fact that we have architecture that inspires. And this is, as I said in an earlier presentation, I make it a point to walk up from North Gate, up this passage, and go back in this direction, largely because it gives you such a shot in the arm for any architect. So that has to be an inspiring campus. What should the architectural character of all the buildings be like? And I think this answer was very clear. We have to have an architecture that signifies diversity, but unity. And for me, the best way of thinking about this is like a jazz band. In a jazz band, everybody maintains their own character. They don't subsume that character. A jazz band is not a solo performance like an Indian classical music performance. A jazz band is not also like a symphony orchestra where one man says everything, everybody then playing the same tune. They're all doing their own thing in a sense, but the complex harmonies that they create, they hold everything together. And that's what in some sense our campus architecture should signify. So it should not be an architecture that has a uniform one type of architecture. That's not what it is about. It's about wonderful, inspiring architecture by different people, but all held together by the way it relates to each other, and all held together by the way it is positioned and how it works in synergy with each other, like a jazz band. And that's what we wanted the campus to be like. It has to be an architecture that is enlivened by activity. So whatever we build has to have unprogrammed spaces that people can use in a variety of ways, and the activities themselves become places. So when Rahul will talk a lot more about this, and Gurdev Sahab will also talk a lot more about this as we go ahead, that in their buildings, it's not just utilitarian spaces they're creating many spaces that are just ready for appropriation and use in a variety of ways, and that's extremely important. We have to have a campus that celebrates landscapes, okay, because that's one of the great charms of our place, and we have to have a campus that where the views from the new facilities that we create are views that people can enjoy and inspire them, admire those views, etc. It's a campus that preserves memories, and here's a little tricky issue that comes to it. It has to be a campus that people can remember, but we don't want a fossilized campus. Okay, we want a campus that people remember. There are aspects of it remember. They also celebrate the change and the diversity that happens there. And that's an important aspect of what we are trying to do as the additions go ahead. It should be an architecture that provides comfortable, high-quality work environments. Okay, this is, I think, also somewhat unclear in people's minds. Now, what does it mean to say high quality work environments? I mean, you have to have a comfortable environment in which you can work and be productive. And the definition of that, of course, keeps changing as time goes along. Definition of that keeps changing as new technologies come in. Definition of that changes as we use the facilities more and more intensely. The more intensely you use it, the more servicing you need for those facilities. There was a time when all you needed to be an architect was a T-square. You can see one or two lying around here, pencils and some erasers. And that's not how you do architecture any longer. You use computers, you use lights, if you use computers, you need a little bit of a dust-proof environment. You cannot work in any temperature with the dust flowing in. I mean, this is not, of course, there are many definitions of this, and as we go along, what we can afford, what we can do, all of these become important. But as we build CEPT's facilities, we have to look at facilities across the world and what other institutions are offering. Here, for example, is Rahul's studio at Howard. This is the famous, very structured layout, very dense layout of lots of students. Once again, we have to question many old myths. It does not mean that you have a structured studio that means you cannot be creative in a structured studio. You can be immensely creative in structured studios, like this. We have to do things at scale. In India, this is Michigan, and this is it's a high quality work environment. There's absolutely lots of light. There's lots of, the temperature is good. You have space to work. Everybody is organized. I mean, we have to start thinking of these questions of how do we make high quality work environments. Space is not everything. You don't always need space. And for that, I put a picture here of the AA school, where if you are lucky if you get a desk of this size. Mostly students work in the bar or somewhere in the library or something like that. We don't have a bar, but the canteens can work. We have to have a facility that can be well managed and well serviced. Going ahead, we cannot operate in the way that we did, and that's something that we have to clearly keep in mind. We have to use land judiciously. We cannot have an architecture here where we take center city land. We have a lot of land, and I said we have ample amount of land, but that doesn't mean we have endless amount of land. And so we are going to have to place every new facility right, and some places we might have to go vertical. There's no question about that. Okay, with that in mind about what sort of character of campus we want to see, I just want to get on to the next thing, which is how should the campus improvements and developments be managed? And this was a question we asked early in 2012. We instituted a building committee at that time to oversee all matters pertaining to land and buildings. There was no such system in place. There was, this committee also prioritizes what is to be done, programs building, selects architects, approves additions, alterations. It's constituted by the chairman, and the committee lasts for 3 years. Okay, we have members here. Two members from the board, which is Praful Anubai, who is from the Ahmedabad Education Society, and he has worked in IIM for his entire life and knows the place. Great institution builder himself. Achal Bakeri, who is an alum, trained as an architect from here, also on the board, and as a great sense of what facilities and campuses mean to places. We have Reshma Ben Shah, who is a member. She's from the Faculty of Technology. All of you know her. Krishna Ben, of course, has seen this campus develop since the early 60s. She's a great member to have on board, and myself. We are now going to add, I might just announce in a sense, we are going to add Arthur Duff to the committee from the Faculty of Architecture on this, because we need to augment it with amount of buildings that we are doing right now. We've also instituted a campus office so that the maintenance can be better on campus. Mercy Samuel is the professor who manages the operations and maintenance work. She's from the Faculty of Management. Reshma Ben Shah, all the projects. Dilip, whatever I say about him will be insufficient, because over the last 3 or 4 years, Dilip Patel, who's the campus architect for all sorts of small additions, alterations, repairs, upkeep. I mean, it's a thankless task. Some of you can try it out and do some of this. And so he's been the architect of all the improvements that I will talk about in a minute. We also have Professor Christopher Benninger commissioned to do the master plan. Now, the master plan is not master plan in the sense of frozen, plan that cast in stone sort of thing, but a person to guide all the developments that go along. And it's a pretty collegial atmosphere between Rahul, between the building committee, Christopher, ourselves. We all look at what is being done and sort of think of the next steps. And that is how the campus master plan gets prepared, and we keep thinking of things. We have an inclusive process for briefing architects and reviewing designs. Once again, for those of you who have just seen such a thing in the last 2 years, might think that it has been there forever, but never. I mean, this is now we have meetings where Rahul is subject, or the other architects like Gurdev Singh are subject to, basically all the users, talking to them about the design and asking them questions about the design. How is this going to happen? How is that going to happen? And that's very important. We've also started a process for soliciting comments and suggestions. This, you can see, is the second event of that sort, where the designs that are going to be done are put up. Because, you see, when you have to design a building, many people are going to use it. Everybody will have a different idea about what should be there and should not. And thank God they have a different idea, because if they didn't have a different idea, and if everybody could spontaneously come to a consensus, then we wouldn't need architects. So thank God, actually, that they don't come to a spontaneous conclusion, and therefore we need architects. The architect has to listen to everybody, hear what they have to say, and then he's the person trained to work with the client in taking decisions. Decisions have to be taken. But these events are for soliciting suggestions, soliciting comments, okay? And that's what is meant by participation, okay, in some sense. We are also putting things up on Facebook so that people in the larger community can look at things that are being done and they can comment on it. I don't know very many institutions that put up their building plans in this way, but we are trying to be a model institution that teaches other institutions how to manage their process of designing and expansion. I think all of us are learning how to make this process a constructive dialogue instead of a sort of a slanging match or a maligning match that a lot of people are engaged in very often. Participation doesn't mean that Rahul has to or Gurdev Singh has to do what you tell him to do. I mean, after all, they are the architects of this building. And they will work along with the clients, and somebody will be in charge of taking decisions. But yes, certainly, constructive inputs are essential, absolutely essential to them making a sensible building. They are not frivolous sort of things, but many of you are students, all of you are going to become architects, you're going to become planners. You will be in a position where you will have to take decisions. You can't just stand back and say, tell me what to do, I'll do it. That's not what architects and planners do. That's to be kept in mind, and I think the whole CEPT community in some sense is learning how to have a dialogue about this instead of having a slanging match about this. We also had to institute a process for managing construction. These are our construction supervisors, construction managers. We were on the site, they were taking a picture of us, I took a picture of them. So that's what this is about. Okay, with that all in mind, with these sort of processes being built up, a number of improvements at CEPT Campus have been done over the last 4 years. First of all, we improved this facility off campus and moved all the non-academic activities off campus so that we could have the academic activities on campus. This meant investing a lot of money in creating offices for all the non-academic activities, all the consulting activities. Almost ₹1 crore was spent in making this facility so that we could concentrate all the teaching activities on campus and de-stress the campus a little bit. So that was one of the very first things that was done. Some of you might remember this. Then we started, a sort of a participatory approach to space allocation. I remember, and many of you remember, I'm sure, the sort of vicious fights that used to happen between faculties over space. And we wanted to get out of it and start a discussion instead of fighting over space. Whenever resources are scarce, people are likely to fight over them. If you institute a good process in place, then you reduce the frictions a little bit and improve the efficiency of space use. Now the space allocation process, I'm happy to say, after 3 years of it functioning well, that's a matrix that tells you all the rooms on campus, all the courses on campus. This is a timetable: Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. In 3 or 4 hours, entire space use for the semester is fixed, and all the facilities have been integrated. I think that's a big achievement. We are using the space far more efficiently and far more rationally, and far more peacefully than we used to earlier. We over the years, we have slowly invested in upkeep and repairs. I mean, we literally had the buildings washed. If you want to, this building was specially washed because it was black, as you saw in that earlier picture. Some of it was just washing, but a lot of it was just establishing systems for cleaning. It's not perfect as yet. It's not perfect because we don't have facilities. I'll give you one example. You have a problem because people take food up to their classrooms, and then they leave the trays there after they finish their food, and then the dogs come in there and create a mess out there. Now this is impossible to maintain something like that. Now why do they take the food upstairs? Well, because there's no place to sit and eat. If it's raining, how do you sit in the where do you have lunch? So we'll have to create facilities. Till we get that, things are going to be still a little bit problematic. But some of the simple things that were done by Dilip earlier on was just lighting the campus a little bit, hanging a few of these lights from trees. I mean, this was a dark campus. Some of the people enjoyed it because of that, but but we had to bring in some safety concerns, etc. You might have seen many of the classroom facilities. The planning studio downstairs were one of the first ones to be done. I mean, it's a space to be used by 100 people. If it's not efficiently laid out, it's very difficult to use it. We are, including Dilip, we are all not perfectly happy with this space, but it's pretty good job for the beginning, and we have to start thinking how we'll use the spaces again. The entire FT building, which was a complete mess, I mean, that building is had to be redone, and even after it was redone, it is not in good shape. There are constant demands that it be completely air conditioned, because it's impossible to use them given the amount of mosquitoes you have there and the amount of damp that enters the building and the poor lighting and ventilation in the building. And we're trying to hold on to that because we're planning to build a brand new FT building. Many new facilities were created of this sort, like the GIDC Bhavan, which was an old canteen breaking down, etc. And things like the Fab Lab and things like that were added. I don't want to go into a long list of it, but this is, was a campus in 2012. We were using about 14,000 meters square of space on campus. That's about 150,000 square feet of space. The campus got a bit expanded. We created parking. We added the GIDC hall, etc. And the facilities, all these blue buildings that are here were revamped, and we added about 2,500 square meters, which is not a hell of a lot, but in any case, that whatever that helped. Over the last, by the end of this year, we will have spent something like 17.6 crores in the different additions and upkeep and repairs and things like that, which is, over the previous 10 years, I don't think more than 1 crore rupees was spent, probably. I mean, so it was that poor in repairs and maintenance, maybe 1.5 crores. Now, just very quickly about the planned expansion of academic programs. Presently, we have an intake of about 1,500 students. We are planning, you can see here, these are all the courses, undergraduate courses, these are all the postgraduate courses. There are a total of so many students. That's the intake. Already we have increased intake in some of the courses. This is all necessary for keeping CEPT a relevant institution. We can't be a minuscule institution and still be, but we cannot expand. We don't want to expand senselessly either. We have to add some new programs. Eventually by 2021, we will be about 2,500 people. So almost 800 or 1,000 people will be added to the campus, and we need to plan for that also. While we do this, we need to keep in mind all, it's upgrading of facilities, it's keeping the charms of this place alive and still expanding, and these are the plans here. So that's where we started. We had, that's what the campus looked like. We had 16 16,000 square meters of space. And the first things we decided that needed to move to improve the architectural character of the campus and to add some new facilities are these many buildings in yellow. The first of all, this NBO material lab, the FA woodwork shop, stationery shop, Amul and canteen, all of them, it was planned that we would take them out and these are the ongoing works on the campus. So we have the Lilavati Lalbhai Library, all of you know that, it's under construction. The Shrenikbhai Plaza, that's what is going to get redone as we go ahead before November, and the new canteen that we want to put up in the same location as the old one, larger and better equipped. Okay, a new toilet block. I mean, one of the legacy problems at CEPT is the architectural disdain for toilets, as if we just don't need them. So it's amazing how few toilets we have. So we're going to have to add some new toilets here, and of course that toilet block was augmented. That one was built, and various others were already built, but we have to add that one. There's a CEPT workshop right next to the GIDC Bhavan, which Gurdev Singh will talk about, and so they're going to talk about it. So that's the new library building. That's the new canteen that's coming up in place of the old one. I'll let Rahul talk about that. And that's the new workshop block that is coming up at the back. What this means is that from the 16,000 square meters that we had, we will be adding about 4,800 square meters more, and we will go up to 21,000 square meters. That's like saying we were using approximately 160,000 square feet, and we are going to add 25% more, and that's construction that is already ongoing. Okay, so that's what the campus will look like. Then the next facility that is planned will require this little block at the back to go, and an academic facilities building that will be put up in this place, and a canteen, another canteen that's put up here or perhaps in the other direction. So the plan is not completely fixed, and as we go further it's even less fixed. But this building is academic facilities building with a new auditorium that will house at least 400 to 500 people, more classrooms, seminar rooms, etc., for common use of all the faculties, so that the studio spaces will not get disturbed by their use as classroom teaching spaces. So that's the academic facilities building. Professor Christopher Benninger, who is also a part of the CEPT community in many ways, is the architect who is going to design this at some point in the coming 3, 4, 5 months. He will come here and do a presentation about what his design of that is going to be like. Rahul is going to deal with the South Canteen here. And we are also planning that a laboratory building be put up at the back. One thing let me say about the location of the CEPT workshop building. Urvi manages the CEPT workshop. She was very unhappy with this location. I am unhappy with this location. I think everybody involved in the building committee also would prefer the CEPT workshop to be bang here somewhere. Because really, if you want a culture of making things as part of your teaching, then it has to be right bang here in the middle. Okay, you cannot put it out here. It was not possible to add this facility here in the middle. In future, we might still build it, let us say maybe underground, a whole basement of workshop or something, who knows what. It's still possible. At that time, this is generic space. It might be used for something else. But for the coming years, this is where we're going to have the workshop. And that's, it's far away and might deter students from walking there. But we'll see what can be done about that. Once we do that, as I said, our facilities go up from 21,000 to 25,000 square meters. Once that is done, this little building at the back will need to go, and then at that time we will add a small building here which will be for FM and FT together, Faculty of Management, Faculty of Technology together here, so some of the spillover can go here. A tall structure here which will have all the consulting, research, administrative offices that will be a part of this. You can see the north entrance will be restructured so that when you are coming down here, this axis becomes the most important axis because you're heading off to the common facilities here. And then these steps that will already be done as part of the plaza will become important entry into the center of the campus. So that's, this is more like some numbers in Excel sheet. So anyway, so here it is. This will add another 8,000 square meters of space here, and so we will go up to 33,000 square meters. Remember that presently we are 16,000 square meters. Okay. Finally, after we do that, what did we add here? Nothing here. Next one. That's the Faculty of Technology building that will come up here. That will add some more space to this place, which will bring it up to 3 lakh, almost 4 lakh square feet on campus. Then this is now all in the realm of possibility. We are not very sure that this will happen or not, but hopefully we are able to restructure and replace the Hatti Singh Center and that small office that is there, and the workshops here, and demolish this FT building, so that what we can do is maybe have a Hatti Singh Center that opens up the view of this Faculty of Design to this plaza. So this plaza starts working as one. The library becomes the true fulcrum that it's supposed to be. The Faculty of Design building can be extended in this direction, and some university facilities can come up. At that time, we might also add some more Faculty of Architecture and Planning facilities here. By doing that, we'll bring the amount of space that we have on campus to 4 lakh, so 46,000 instead of 16,000 which we enjoy at present. Some of you who are students in the lower classes will see the advantages of it. Some of you who are in the older classes will already be alumni when this is done, and that brings us to the next step. Well, one more thing before I go to the next step, which is, some of you might be wondering how this is going to work with the campus on the side, the Ahmedabad University one, which is being designed as we go along. That CEPT campus here, that building has already been built, but the rest of the buildings here are being designed. This is a sketch by my colleague, Bobby Desai. And of course they have our plans in mind so that the two campuses sort of can function a little bit synergistically, though they are separate and will have borders and boundaries. The financing challenge is a big one, and this is really where some of you who are older and going to graduate and the rest of you who are alumni here really can participate in a very, very clear way in building up of the university. If we take all of what we have talked about, then we are going to make additions of almost 30,000 square meters here. The total cost of this is going to be 140 crores. The first ongoing buildings that I mean the Lalbhai Library, the plaza, workshop, and the new toilet block is going to cost 23 crores, and the financing for this has been tied up. We have the money, which is why we started the construction, and we are moving ahead on that, and it should be finished. The next buildings to come up, the next set of buildings requires 18 crores, and then 35, 26, and 40. This is a real challenge for CEPT University to find this funding from variety of sources, and this is really an important place where the alumni can get involved in helping find people. I know architects don't make that sort of money to be able to fund buildings, but they have clients who are very, very wealthy sometimes, and who can be perhaps encouraged to participate in the building of great institutions in our country. So with that, let me stop. Thank you very much. So I've already taken a lot of time. We won't stop for questions right now. I would request, is that okay if you don't stop? I request Professor Gurdev Singh to come and present the workshop. You know what? He is 1966 batch. He heads Navrachna School, which all of you must have heard great things about already. They held a great exhibition here and their student work is really terrific. It's great to see CEPT alums go out and start institutions like that, and to invigorate old ones like Harvard and other such places. So we have Gurdev Singh. He's doing the workshop facility for us. Let's listen to what he has to say about this building and then get on to Rahul. Sorry, this is going to stretch a bit, but let's pack as much as we can.
The first time I've talking to a full hall like that. I've been here a couple of times, but not like this before. Something special happening here because of everybody is interested in what's happening in the campus here. Okay, well, we have small project that is the workshops. The whole idea is that at present a whole lot of things are very scattered, and how to put them together. Now the issue, yes, we discussed, and is that the location is quite on one side, and how will people get inspired to go there, and that was the task which was given. It's make a building which is reasonably inspiring enough that people would like to go there and work. There is a certain amount of detailing, certain amount of things which you do have a character which pushes them, and then of course the environmental issue which we'll talk later. Okay, this is the site which probably you know. This is what I think already seen. I don't want to spend time on that. The road is changing here. The road is going to change here, and that's going to come out straight here. So this is going to be next to the road here instead of a distance here. What we are basically trying to put together is a wood workshop, a model making workshop, fab lab, metal workshop, textile workshop, paper and print workshop, clay workshop, finishing bay for many things, and of course administration and a store where you can buy things and do stuff like that here. Now the whole idea is that we put all of these things together in a way that maybe we think something about it today, and after few years you change it and something else comes into it. So reasonably flexible kind of a space, which we designed for something now which can be changed, can open out, can adapt to different activities down the line. Basically we started with something like this here, that a place which inspires, kind of a place which has a sense of craft, where people can go and get inspired. Now, a difficult task to do, but we will see. We thought we would probably be able to do that. One of the issues which is not here is that, of course, there are very inspiring things within the site here, and we have taken inspiration, but at the same time, it is not that we use the same language that is done here. You take the inspiration in terms of the quality of space, and then you do it again in a different material, in a different way of doing things, different construction method, to carry the essence, but the technology has changed, and that's what we are trying to do here. And then this is one of the early presentations that we had, these issues that, we had this recycle issues and paper and fabric the students make. Some of these things can be used in the workshop. In terms of technology, we thought we will end up doing a laminated beam. I'll go into detail of these kind of things later. Then a structure should carry a particular expression. All that we learn in second, third year of stress diagram and tension and compression and how things happen, all that should be very transparent and seen in the structure, the way you do things. And then we also thought at one time that students could participate, but in a way not in terms of actually doing the work on site, but in terms of the kind of products they make, like in paper and fabric and other things in clay, tiles. Some of these things can be used there. Then we also thought of some basic environmental issues. Of course, the building is oriented north-south because of the light that we are taking in. Issues that a certain amount of east and west parts are taken care. The rainwater is collected and is recycled into the paper making workshop so that you get an acid acid-free water for paper making, and some of these things are taken care, as the when I talk about in detail when it comes further, and then and then also we took care that in terms of a thermal mass, of course it was a bit of a difficult decision to make. When you make exposed concrete, you can't talk about thermal mass because the concrete goes outside, the mass is outside. So we do take care that some places the thermal mass is inside and there's a render outside where you are not very close, but certain places the thermal mass is outside, and you can't do anything but to put a layer of insulation here. So these are the details which we'll talk about later. And this is the water recycling for the paper issue. And of course, when we started, we were thinking that this is going to be a naturally ventilated building. So and it will still be working as naturally ventilated building for a reasonable time, 7 to 8 months or maybe more during the year. But then it's later decided that, if you don't mind me saying, Bimal, that this came in that because of the issues, certain issues, most of the new buildings coming up might be air conditioned, or maybe at least the cooling component has been taken care in a different way. So we started differently, but we then changed it, and we are now trying to make it work. And then that also is one of the advantages in a way. We were discussing, laughing actually, because if it's too hot, you may say, okay, let's go to workshop and do some work because it's a cool space and nice to work, instead of really sweating it out in the workshop here. So, but at one time we were thinking that we have a hot air vent system here, which will still continue to work because it is air conditioning or whatever is not going to be on 24 hours and all the time of the year. So this will also be working through. We basically started with the metrics like that. On one end we put all the issues where the safety required, the dust, the sand, the sound issues, the wet and dry issues, the waste generating things, the open space required, the air conditioning, the heavy machinery. On the other side we put all that, and we developed a kind of metrics to put what should go where, and that became an easy way how to put things where, basically. A very pragmatic way of putting things, but it's easier to make a matrix and understand how to put things where. So what we did is a plan organization to start with. When we started designing, we thought we basically started from this module here. I just want to give an example. I remember Leo's sister used to run a school called Menino here, near the Ritz Hotel down there. And my son was studying there. And a very nice place. And what they used to do is, the rule was that they pick up a mat from the wall, pick up a toy, play, and then they have to, before they go to the next toy, they have to put it back, put it in place, put the mat, and then go and find the next toy. A very nice discipline which I learned from my son, basically. So in a way we were trying to think here that maybe that is what it should be, because generally what happens is, workshop do become a bit chaotic places and a lot of work is going on, but it is also possible that some kind of a module system can be worked out. So we've actually started from a small module and see how much it can be, and then the modules got repeated, and what you have is a circulation in between, and that's the workshop here. Later came the administration component and the service bay here, which takes care of the heat and ventilation and the toilets and storeroom and all that kind of things here. And basically we divided the whole thing into like that here. This is our wood workshop, which had one face. So instead, what you do is open out the workshops here and open out the workshops here. So this area becomes the wet area. That means your clay workshop, your paper workshop and all that comes part of this here. And that is the dry courtyard here in the front here, So all your models, you want to pick up your model or a small model or timber work or a sculpture or whatever you're doing, you could get out and work in the courtyard, in the space out there with trees and shades and all the kind of space you have in the campus. So there's a wet area and a dry area, and that's a very simple configuration here. That's the supply line, and that's the storerooms which are doing here. It's a very simple organization here. Then this was one of the early plans which we thought that we will, because of the environmental issues, we'll end up having a courtyard and put all the things around here like that. But we realized soon that the courtyard system is not going to work, because down the line we want to air condition the whole thing and change. So the whole plan was basically changed. This is also one of the early things when the courtyard was there, and then we thought of a module that you could go up and down, that each module is equipped with everything. You basically book a module and then go there and work, and when you take a clean space and give back a clean space, that's the kind of workshop we were trying to work. But then when the whole idea changed that these spaces are going to be environmentally controlled, then we got into a different mode altogether. Now I'll show you the sketches which come in, drawing which come in later. This is just a relation with the GIDC Bhavan in the service area, and that is the building. That's a new road which is coming up, going almost parallel to the building. So this area, this extension here, becomes the extension of the workshops here, a dry area, and this extension here comes the extension of a workshop which is going to be clay and paper and all those kind of things here. A very basic plan here. You basically slide the doors and there's an open space. But these are the demarcated wet area. That means it will have a proper drainage system here, that even if you chuck a bucket here, it is not going to grow all the way in. It is controlled, and that's it. So this is the ceramic workshop. That is the paper making. Then that becomes the fabric. This is the fab lab, and that is the model making workshop. And then is the woodwork, heavy machinery here. Now this part here is going to remain open at 24-hour level here. Anybody can work in this area at odd times or late times. Rest of the workshop would get closed, because most of the machinery here and here you cannot operate that machinery without a particular help or expert help here. But some of these areas, some of these model making will have extended time. So these have a different thing. And we have a storeroom here where you can buy a whole lot of tools and material which you require for model making and things. That is there, and then that's a painting bay which is connected to that. That means you take it up there, and a whole lot of very fine finish in terms of painting, polishing, and all that can be done. But then it has a separate, and all the services come during this level, and the air conditioning will go above that here. Well, this is the section which is now getting through, because we're going to have services coming through here, and earlier we were trying to think that we will have some very flat fans in this and have the ventilation here. The kind of a thing we are trying to work it out is that the system will be installed in place, so there is a place, and that's the air movement which works here. And when in normal time, when that is not there, when the temperature is not that high and humidity, then there's going to be a stack vent system which will work here. So we have a stack vent system which will work into that here. I'll show you in the next, it's not in this section here. So basically all the doors open out into the dry coat and the wet coat here, and that's a whole lot of partitioning and sinks which fall between the clay workshop and the paper workshop, and that is how the workshops can open out. You open the door and you can have a space which is larger in case you want to do some other activity down the line. Well, primarily the base, the basic two walls here and services here, and the fins at front and back, and just the columns in the middle. Then the partitioning system, which is mostly going to be in timber, and the roof system here. Roof system, the roof system is also made in So we thought that at one time when we are making the roof, we are like whole lot of concrete and steel work you see here. So we thought it will be nicer to use a new material, but we can't really expose it too much. So we are using laminated timber. There are a couple of options that we are exploring. There is the possibility of a recycled material which comes in here, a pine from Europe, which is probably a year or two seasoned because it's dry seasoning. That's one option. And the option is that Australia, the Canadian government is trying to push their timber into Indian market. That is the Douglas fir. That's a technical name. Oregon is the name which is used in the market. It's a pine quality, it's a fir quality, but it is slightly pinkish color, you know. And they are trying to kind of give a reasonable rebate so that we use it. And in the Delhi office, we have tried making a house in that. It turned out pretty nice and good. They give a good seasoning, good cleaning. They give you cut sizes, and we are trying to use that. So we basically end up having a laminated timber construction, which I'll show you down the line. This is the entry facade. This is the west side here, and that's the entry here. And we have a large wall with the CEPT Workshop written, and that is all on the west side. And the insulation is on the inside, so all the offices here inside are insulated. But of course, as I said, we can't really use this wall as a thermal mass. We can't. Then is this is what you see on top here is the laminated timber which is coming out, and these are all the doors which open out, and you can come out into this. Our trees are just a bit thick trees, of course, but I've just shown it like that so you can see the concrete behind here. You know. Just some of the slides to show how the building is going to be. This is the courtyard, which is an extension of the wood workshop and model making workshop. Entry again. These are the inner corridor and the workshops on both sides here. That's the kind of laminated timber beams we're going to have. I don't know whether you must have seen some of the buildings by the architecture school and the art school in Chandigarh done by Jenere. He has used a very similar thing. I mean, I'm partly inspired because that's a very nice building, but in concrete. But we have taken up in a very different way. We have taken a very compressive member here and a tensile member which goes down here. So it's a very exposed and naked structure which kind of shows what is in compression and what is in tension. And that I think is very important because the same thing will go into the detailing of how the door works, how the door slides and all those. So this is something which we will be, I don't know, still we are trying to work it out how and where we're going to make it. And then at the same time, we were also thinking that if suppose we end up buying the wood and do it locally here, we can make a jig for this in such a way that this jig in 2 or 3 pieces can stay in the workshop, and by flexibility you can rechange it, and then same thing can be used for making chairs and other laminated construction and things like that. So that is still something we have to talk about it to the builder, to the actually the contractor, how this can be done. So part of this material, the jig which we use to make this laminated can stay here to do other things down the line. All right. And some of the interiors again, that's open space. It's a very simple, and of course these are the ducts here, and behind this, and that is the air outlet that you get. There's the lighting which will come here, and that reflects and comes down here. So that you'll see down the line here. That's the kind of a lighting you will have. So the from outside, what you're going to see is the reflected ceiling here. That's the ceiling which basically takes the light from the beam below here and reflects and gives an evenly distributed light. So that's the kind of a thing it will be, and that's the whole building. And that's the flue which was not in there earlier. So these are the flues which will come in a very thin sheet, about 300 dia, which will go up about 2.5–3 meters. So more the heat, more the sun. It's a black painted thing. more the sun, more the suction of the air, and all the hot air on top will get sucked. So you don't have to use the air conditioning all the time. Only in the very worst climate, when the humidity really goes bad and we can't really tolerate the heat, we use the air conditioning. Otherwise, the system will have a very reasonable ventilation system of its own and will work quite nice. Well, that is it. It's a very simple and small building, and thank you so much.
So we'll just go to the third presentation directly and then have questions. So we can do it all at once.
Thank you. It's always a pleasure to be here, and it's always emotional to be here. And I think for me, this time there are two reasons. One presented about 10 or 11 months ago, but this time what's coming through my mind is it's incredible that Gurdev Singh presented before me. He was my first teacher at CEPT when I joined our first studio, and so it's amazing to be, and humbling to be really following him in this presentation after that lovely building. But secondly, I think what's very important, which you should feel privileged about, which is all you students who are here, is this is an amazing process. And when we presented the last time, I thought about it. But what it has triggered off as a discussion in the last 10 or 11 months is absolutely amazing. The fact that you're having such a transparent process occurring is absolutely amazing. I don't even know anywhere else where something like this has happened for an institution of this nature, especially an architecture institution where people are actually scared to present because everyone and his dog have an opinion on what the building should be like. So, this is absolutely amazing that this has been set up, and I hope it is successful. I think so far, the last presentation that I met, the feedback, we've learned so much from the feedback, and some of it I'll point out to you as we go through this. So I just wanted to preface that. We made a presentation as part of this protocol process that's been set up by Bimal, and that was about, I think, last August, so 9, 10, 11 months ago, where we had been told 4 days before that presentation, when I was asking Bimal what should be the plinth level of the library because we had to go under construction, and he said, no, we've got to figure it out on the plaza, and then one discussion led to the other, and we very quickly made you a preliminary presentation on what the plaza could be, what the issues are. So today what I'm going to do is give you an update on the library, where we are at. It's too late now for any comments. Maybe some we might be able to use, but I hope we have incorporated many. But the plaza is at its preliminary stage in the sense we've done the designs. We've had 10 months since then of inputs on the plaza. We've had inputs accelerated in the last 2 weeks when the Facebook page was posted, and we've tried to synthesize as much of that as possible, and we will continue to do that in the next few days before we actually start issuing drawings. So let's get started. This is how we're going to divide the presentation, the CEPT Campus, Library, Canteen, Plaza, just to share with you some of our own readings which Bimal has already highlighted. So the CEPT Campus, for me, modern heritage, I had said that the last time. I think the ambiguity of spaces, which Bimal highlighted, is critical. We must remind ourselves, unprogrammed spaces and surfaces for expression, because I think the pulling down of the couple of buildings have highlighted that issue. And of course, we are totally conscious about it. I also spent nine years on this campus, I say very carefully. And so these walls, what they mean. And by the way, that workshop wall, I was talking to Srivatste earlier today, that workshop wall, when I was here for 5 or 6 years, was never repainted because it had a beautiful perspective on it, and our seniors were so protective of it that our whole 5 years they never let us change it. So it wasn't an expression wall for us, at least. I hope you all guys did some more changes on it. And then I'm going to talk about the library, the canteen, and the plaza. The canteen and the plaza as being an evolution based on comments, which is yet open for a little discussion, but we are in the process of finalizing things. So it's very much, that's how I presented the library last time. The modern heritage dimensions of this are absolutely critical. I mean, this is a wonderful building. It has incredible architectural moments. Bimal again has highlighted this so beautifully. These are spaces that continue to inspire Gurdev Singh in his building. So this is something that has left an amazing impression on us. The ambiguity of these spaces, the way they get transformed. Look at the happening happiness on that woman's face, but that's because it's a selfie. Anyway, it's incredible, the spatial quality of these places, the symmetry, the kind of architectonics, to see 4-inch thick concrete. I mean, it's mind-boggling. Even today I get goosebumps when I sort of look at it. So that respect is amazing. But what is interesting is with that formality and with that architectonics, there's this ambiguity, which is stunning, that you have spaces that just go into nothing. You have spaces that can be transformed. What Bimal was talking about, you get a fix coming up this, but you come sometimes and it surprises you because it's completely different. They are unprogrammed spaces. This is critical in an institution, spaces which get occupied in different ways with people. Maybe some of you guys recognize each other here, or get transformed. This was the black building which was washed, and you make spaces. So these are unprogrammed. The berm can be many things. I remember we had Remo Fernandez play there on one of the festivals. One of his earliest performances when he was just emerging as a musician was Between the Berms. It was the most stunning concert. These things get reprogrammed, and that's very amazing. And they get colonized in different ways. And surfaces for expression, which you all talk about, happiness as a result of it. And there are different surfaces all over. I mean, the workshop was one of them, but I think there are many, and many can be created if we need to. So let's start at the library, which was the first thing that we did. This is really an updating of where we've gone, and I'll point out a few things which actually influenced what we finally did in its evolution. So this is what the location was. We were given this as part of the master plan. The program actually required a much bigger mass in terms of the requirements for the libraries. And we began to start establishing, because the mandate was very clear that the library is going to be central, and it will be the first step in trying to structure what the campus might be. The SID was feeling left out in a backyard. How do we connect this in the future? And I think what Bimal showed as a master plan has evolved since then. Those were words he gave me at that point, that these were plans. How do we open it up to the back? How do we make it a neutral building that will become the focus? And that has now evolved in the form of a plan. The height was critical, and this was the big battle because the requirements would never fit keeping the height of the existing buildings. And this was the biggest struggle, both for the building committee and for us as architects, to find a solution where we didn't have to go high and yet meet all the requirements on the footprints. And that's what sort of led to the final design. What are the lines you relate to as you would build in a historic district? Because this is modern history in a sense, the campus. And our deep respect for it, I think, was something that began to remind us all the time that that was critical. And that's how we came up with the diagram of actually doing a building that would be partly underground. And this was the first version that we had presented, where the program again was much less. We had talked about this kind of wall which would relate to the brick, and then you'd have a canopy. But then when we realized as a building committee that the beauty of a reading room there, especially if these were going to be cooled spaces, might as well add more, because then more students can at that height enjoy the campus at the tree levels and have these facilities. He showed you this image of the basement where people work there. Now you guys will work in 2 levels of what are reading rooms, which will also be places you can take your laptop and work. So then it began. This was the first version where the building was underground. This became the second version where we began to add more program. But what we also did here was we turned the canopy down as a roof. And Nimish Patel and Parul were here, who talked about too much glare, too much reflected light. So we studied all that. That was a very helpful input. We began to modulate what might be the quality of light in there for various reasons. And then this is now the final design, where you actually have a facade which would open, close. You have a base in concrete, and then you have the building below. And the inner surface, which was earlier much more glass, like a glass box, has now become surfaces with modulations and cutouts and bridges that sort of connect it, and the ground stays the same. You have skylights in the courtyard, so the light that goes all the way to the lower basements is actually quite stunning for some of you who might have gone in there. And that's what the facade has now evolved into, a base in concrete, which is actually very large. Talking about thermal influence, it has a void in it. So it's incredibly well insulated on both ends through these voids, but it gives you glimpses through the library and the louvers are operating, so they can actually open completely. Now, one of the things that Bimal had given us as a brief is that this building should also be a learning building in the way Gurdev Singh has presented his building. So for us, the student participation here is not in the design as much as exercises where you might actually learn at what position to fix these louvers in different seasons. What does that mean to calculate light? The building becomes an operating instrument in a sense to understand the modulations of space and the modulations of light. And these louvers can be fixed at 6 settings, so you can actually on different facades set them differently to understand it as part of the exercise. But it also shows the use of different materials. Again, as Gurdev Singh is using laminated wood, here they are about a whole variety of materials which begin to show you how these things can be combined for different purposes. And then that's the entrance, one of the entrance bridges into it, where you see the courtyard. This is the lower level in the book stacks with the carrels, and that's how the book stacks are being designed. We are now beginning to get mock-ups done. It's designed as a piece of large furniture that sits in the center of the core, and it's got a series of rooms at different levels that you can walk into, and it's going to be so all the things you can't do now that the campus is lit so brightly, you'd find spaces, I assure you, in here. So these are the different kinds of levels. You walk into a series of rooms. The HVAC and all of that is integrated within the bookshelves. So these are half levels, and there are little rooms on each side where different collections can be kept. So there's a lot of variation, and the height here becomes actually 8 feet. So it becomes much more intimate compared to the larger volume of the library. And this is just a section that shows you the complexity of the building, how these louvers open, the section through those voids in the base. Then as you go down, you see the first courtyard, you see the second courtyard with the stacks, and then the last one is where just the large storage on movable carrels will be kept. So people won't go in there. That will be just all the reference stuff which will be bought out when you come in. But there you see the carrels, and you see the 2 levels, and you see the bookcases. So these are just sections, and you see the 2 reading rooms on the top. You see the half levels in the carrels in these sections. These are just sections that are being cut at different points. But you see the complexity of it. The reading rooms are connected, and from those points you get fantastic views to the outside. This is the back staircase, which is the circulation, which will be controlled by the librarian so that books don't sort of disappear as you go. Now this is already under construction. It's going up. Actually, a little more than this has been done. This is a 2-week-old photo. But you see the different levels beginning to appear. We are changing the concrete color in the area above the ground as versus below, so that light is much more reflected, but also you get a change of scale in a sense. These are the stacks, and you see these mid-levels where there'll be half stairs and mezzanines. So the books will all be in here as part of these stacks. And you can see the quality of light from the second basement. Actually, on a diagonal, you can see trees up at the ground level. So there's a lot of porosity, so it's not just dark space, but there's a lot of bounce light that will hopefully enter this area. These are large portals, which are the structure on all 4 sides, under which will be a large table, and then you have the stacks right there, so you can bring books, which is in a large double height space, but then you can go up little stairs into different rooms and bring books out. So it's like entering a big walk-in kind of closet in a sense. And actually there's shuttering there, but behind the portals it's a continuous skylight. So you actually will get, and that is just a part of the skylight we opened for the stair, but that entire wall is a skylight, and this is at the lower level. So you're going to get natural light come all the way down, and it will be bounced on this sort of concrete. And there are moments where, it comes into a corner. We have also done mock-ups. That's the louver system. We have chosen the one which is the natural teak kind of wood. This is the different positions that it's opened in. These are mock-ups of the catwalk, which will be used to operate them. This is the mock-up of the base. That's the special hardware which allows the 6 positions so that it can be modulated based on what we need. So that's just an update on the canteen. It's going to, I think the civil work will be done in 3 months. I was talking to Bimal. We might organize some guided tours through it and set up something for that. So some of you are curious to see the insides. We can do that. So for the canteen, this was a very difficult problem. And when we were doing the plaza initially, we were not involved in it, but then Bimal said that it's integral to the plaza and please help us, and so we got involved in doing the canteen. Of course, we looked very hard at the existing canteen because even personally one has many emotional connections to it for the person who designed it. And the canteen has evolved a lot. When I was a student from 76 to 80 something, there were different canteens, different operators. This moved around, this got built. So this is an evolving process. But I think the critical thing here was that the retrofitting just wasn't possible. The roof was very high. If you removed it, there was really not much left to retrofit it. It wasn't economical at all. And the other thing was that a number of fragments around the campus, like the Amul, the printing shop, the stationery, all that had to be integrated into one to leave as much open space. So that became the real challenge. And so then the trade-offs in our looking at the cost analysis, looking at weighing the cost to the emotions and all of that, it became very clear that the best thing in the long run would be to do this. And I think those were wonderful numbers that Bimal showed us, that when you go from a campus of 220 people to 1,500, and he's projecting it to 2,500, otherwise you can't be spending that much money, then this facility is critical because you've got to eat well in hygienic conditions, and it becomes important. So that was the location we chose, and it was for many reasons, because one of the things in the master plan is this is going to become an important entrance. So now you come up here through a series of ramps and steps and planters, so these become more ambiguous spaces. People can sit. These will be wonderful spaces to sit because a lot of people will move here. The other thing is that as a result of what I'm showing you, this campus is going to be totally accessible by people on wheelchairs or anyone who has a disability. So that was a very critical kind of, not a constraint, but a requirement or a challenge, that we made a kind of street that comes here at many levels, and you can enter it at these different levels because it's straddling many levels as you come up to the plaza level. And all the existing trees have been sort of incorporated to expand the seating and all those spaces that are so beautifully used and important for us, but it also gives it a fine grain in the process besides actually maintaining the trees. And so that is really the canteen. And basically, it has all these facilities now integrated. It has a large veranda, which during rain can accommodate 40 people. You can be sitting there. A large kitchen with all its backup facilities. The Amul, the Amul pavilion. Then what we've added is a hand washing. And I went to many information technology campuses, and one of the things I was struck with was that after the cafeteria is used, everyone washes their own dishes. And I've been to Infosys where you have people like Nandan Nilankani washing with like ordinary young people who are working there, etc. And talking to Bimal, we just thought we must introduce that culture. So this is a very large hand wash and a dishwash, where we felt that that actually becomes a social space, and we must change the culture and create even an illusion of equity, if nothing else, that we are not waiting for some little guy to come and pick up your dirty plates and then dogs come and eat the food, which is just horrible from a public health perspective. And so this will be an area where I hope we can all go and wash our own dishes after or before we wash our own hands, and leave it in a place where it's taken and it'll be washed again, but at least there's one level of washing that's done. So it's a cultural shift which I hope will work, and this is something up for debate. If people feel strongly about it, please write in, but write in with your name, no anonymous sort of inputs. We also have existing trees here, and what we've created is a ramp which makes the going up to the upper floor a little much like a promenade. But the reason for this architecturally is it begins to set up a dialogue with the Kanoria Center, which I personally felt very strongly about. Bimal felt that we've got to begin to draw these different components into the campus, because we've had little things that have cut it off completely. So part of the effort in this building has to set up that visual kind of dialogue with it. And then you see under all these trees, there are places to sit. So this will become much, much richer than what we already had, because it will expand along. And what you will do is you will actually, from these seats, you will overlook the ramps and a planter at a lower level. So people coming up here, which already happens to some extent, but will be intensified as this becomes the main entrance into the campus in the coming years. And on the upper floor, We have the stationery store, we have the printing shop, so people can wait because that's something people have to wait in. And we've created a large student area with a very wide veranda, which will have folding doors. This can be the platform for the band. It can be the performance of the band with everyone looking at it from down here. It can become just a student meeting area. But this veranda and that space, which you see as a big platform, is for students. Now, whether we do sliding doors, close it off, so some things can be stored, we can decide, and I think that's the kind of thing we are soliciting inputs on. But that really becomes a student space that can be used at all times. And then that's just the roof plan. And that's what it sort of looks like. That's the veranda. This will be just a concrete base here, the ramp, which takes you up. The Kanoria Center is at the back there, and these become the zones for sort of sitting. So that's the Kanoria, which this ramp comes down and matches the first beam height of the Kanoria, which is very low. So it begins to set up some relationships with that. This is a little bit of a projection to protect the veranda during the rain, so that you get these different layers as you sort of see the building in its sort of depth. So then, coming to the plaza, which really was an extension of what we were establishing in the library, and also 9 months of pretty rigorous inputs. So we just looked at the site conditions, the design proposal, details, possible uses, unprogrammed spaces, and expression surfaces. So everything that we felt were the qualities of the existing campus that we were all enjoying in a sense. And some of this I was aware of. Some of this I began to create categories at our studio as people from our office came. They visited site a number of times. The emails we got, that's talking to faculty like Srivats and others. We began to create these categories, which were the categories of concern. So we felt that becomes a productive dialogue because we get feedback then that is very, very particular. So that's the site, which Bimal's already showed us that. And I had talked about this in our previous thing, this is a campus with many disparate buildings. And so really the plaza becomes a very critical tool to finally tie it up. And tie it up in the future with all the buildings Bimal showed us and how this might open up and connect to it. How do you connect to the Kanoria Center? How do you weave this all together using the existing assets of the trees? And so basically we began to set it up. The library has been done in perfect alignment to the center of the ramp on that original building, because that dialogue we felt was a sacred one in trying to establish a relationship again between these disparate parts. And we felt from the administration building, the center of the entrance of Kanoria would be a fantastic vista to open up. So this became the kind of guiding axis for us to begin to organize the details of the plaza. And then if you began to study it, this is all gone. This is a memory, but this is like the Kanoria Center. You never knew it existed. This, I was looking at the laris that have come outside the front road, which were never there when we were students, and this was like a static version of that. So, you began to get all this, and, we can romanticize this. Yes, of course, it's incremental, but I think when you increase a campus by 10 times, you've got to take this stuff seriously, because I think for another generation, it's very important. So this is what the clutter, in a sense, was. And again here, I often, even this, from even the time I was a student, again, these are moments of pause, and people began to appropriate this in terms of uses, which is wonderful. We did that always as students. This is a great place to catch somebody who's coming off the ramp, because this is the only exit here. But you look at this, this is, for me, the most powerful element on this campus. Subtle, horizontal, it's a ramp, it's a bridge, it's the main connection, but look at the relationship that it has. This is speaking out to something else, even to the tree, but not to this. And yes, you can have a notice board, but I mean, I think, I don't know. I even though I've spent many years enjoying this, I thought in the long term, this is really, it's just not doing justice to the buildings that Professor Doshi designed and the connections that sort of exist here. And you see the relationship of that. I mean, the potential here to create plinths, to create ramps to go up here, places to sit under these trees. I mean, you can animate the periphery of the plaza in wonderful ways, not only to watch Garba, but sports also on a daily basis. And this is, of course, this is like the most complex maze to go to the Kanoria Center. And, so it's like, Yeah, I mean, what are we talking about, you know? And so maybe we don't want to go to the Kanoria Center, but I think we want to, because I think for the art school to connect to us is very important. The year it was established was when we were here, and the kinds of dialogues, Walter D'Souza, others, I mean, it can actually influence architecture if we begin to speak to these folks also. And, you know, this is physically giving us another message, you know, and, you know, between Amul and the stationery, wonderful dialogue, yeah. So, and then, you know, you see this everywhere. The clarity of these buildings is lost. So we studied this and documented it, this amphitheater, which is another story, you know, etc. So we just felt, how do you bring this together in the long term? And that's really what this proposal is about. You see the clutter. I mean, what does this mean? What does this add up? What is the image of the campus? Again, it's not about consistency. We're not saying everything should be exposed brick. Bimal has already made that point. But what we are saying is, how can the ground plane tie and begin to make these disparate parts speak to each other? That's really the important thing. Look at this. It's just like, I don't know. So here is the plaza. So we began to look at it. And these are all, this is what Bimal has already shown. These were the buildings that we, in the August presentation, had talked about, the ones that might need to go because one needs to tie this up and the problems with them. So that was presented in some detail in the August presentation. And so, you know, I think that discussion already began to start, and there was inputs and people were discussing it. What does memory mean, etc. Then how do you bring this sort of order to it became a question. And then it got demolished. And I put this up for reasons because I feel comfortable as an alum, someone who spent time in CEPT, who's very concerned about CEPT. It means a huge amount to me. To say that, for me, this was a very disturbing news item, for whatever it's worth, because it is completely false. It wasn't demolished overnight. It was demolished over 3 days. Not that I knew the day it was going to be demolished. I happened to be here. There were people in it. It was demolished because the school was closed. You don't want this demolition happening and disrupting things. It was supposed to be demolished. And there were 3 kinds of reactions to this in terms of what I got, which made me really think that, gosh, we're having such an incredible shift in culture to have a debate like this, which is what the profession desperately needs. But the distortions here were absolutely amazing. And so it was interesting, just partly on a lighter note, there were 3 kinds of reactions to this. One was many younger people, some of it which came through faculty, like Srivats was someone who was in touch saying, this is what the students feel. And, you know, I was very appreciative of that. And he was one of the single faculty I would point out who was giving me a very good pulse of what people were feeling. And we could then frame what we should think about the plaza in terms of what people perceive they've lost, whether it's intimate spaces, unprogrammed spaces. And a lot of that thinking came out of that. So those were the younger people, which is, I think, you lot, which was partly emotional, partly about what you perceived as what you were losing, which was very interesting. So that was, I tell you, the most productive input we got, and I sincerely mean that. The second lot of inputs we got were architects who were about 5 to 10 years older than me, and their emails were typically about 4 pages long, which went from philosophy, about memory, about loss, about hope, but they were often biographies of everyone they met and everyone they had chai with and who helped them and the models they made and all, and they invariably ended with suggesting that they get half an hour to present their counter proposals. So it was more about counter proposals, which can be productive, but again, you know, how many you can't do design by democracy, so they were not productive in very specific inputs. They were autobiographical about their sense of loss. Whereas the younger group was very specific about what they felt they lost. And then there was another group whose names I will not bring up, which I think were the most vicious attacks, where things like this were sent to foreign critics in America, in Europe, to write in to us and to write in to me to say we were ruining Mr. Doshi's buildings, we were doing this, etc. Which were, I think, for me, and I'm saying this candidly to a CEPT audience, the most vicious, small-minded attacks, because that is not what was happening over here. To present CEPT in that light, in a foreign audience, I think was critically bad. It shouldn't happen again. And I think a group like you should develop a culture, whether you like these buildings and plazas, the different things, but you should develop a culture of dialogue where we have a productive discussion about these things. This is very critical for the profession, for the sake of profession, for us as architects to be taken seriously by society. Otherwise, society is going to see us as some rabble-rousers who are fighting with each other, etc. And otherwise, we wouldn't be going through this process. We would have finished this by now. We would have constructed this over the summer holidays. So I just wanted to use this to make this larger point about the culture that we are collectively constructing here, which is very important. You mustn't take that non-seriously. You must take that very seriously. So, having said all that and got that out of the way after reading about 40 emails and replying to them, it's my way of saying this is what happened, and we move on. So, here is what happens. So, you begin to open up these vistas. You, I think, begin to create an amazing extension of these spaces. I think these buildings have not looked better, and I've talked to many people who are my seniors, and I think at least what I've got, maybe I've got a distorted view, these have actually helped this building. Talking about preservation, talking about our modern heritage, this is what we should be proud of in the way these buildings speak to us now. We see their full facades. They express for the first time their generosity, where they open up and embrace anyone who walks through them. So these are things we have to amplify. We can't, begin to work backwards in this way. Our ambitions have to be about the potential of these buildings, not, a sense of loss which is myopic, because we should be looking at the future. I mean, look at what has happened to this. I mean, this is mind-boggling. Look at that ramp. Look at that, the sense of the plaza. Look at the sense of the bridge, the way it connects to the stair. It's absolutely amazing. Look at these spaces and the potential they have now to create ramps, to bring you up here, for students to sit here, look down, for connections in this direction, which will become much more accessible to people who are disabled, a much clearer sense of arrival to the plaza, not only here, but through all the different vistas in the building. Look at the potential here to create a plinth around these seats, to create many more spaces which are unprogrammed, which are ambiguous, which you can colonize, where classes can happen. It's absolutely amazing how much sort of opens up here. I mean, this guy went to sleep here, so you can see how comfortable it is. But this sense of ambiguity has a different kind of flow, and you begin to actually reinforce this ambition of making the connection. And so this was the first take we had, where we said, first of all, we must create a plinth here. This is a tree we have added, so the dark one is one we have added. But also how you create a sense of plinths, steps, access. How do you create seating around this? How do you reinforce all that seating here around the canteen? How do you create a definition of a central space? And how do you create more of this that sort of ties up? And then we posted this on Facebook, where I think we accidentally put a tree here, which we shouldn't have, which didn't make so much sense. I don't know why we thought maybe someone will teach under that tree. But anyway, it's all this sort of becomes sort of reinforced, and you begin to see the evolution and the way people connect to the administration building, the way this access to Kanoria Center begins to get established. You begin to see this access, but it's not draconic, because you have planters, trees, you go through them, etc. So I think it begins. So we then began to mark this out. So I'm just showing you the process. So it wasn't taken not seriously. It was taken extremely seriously. This meant about 3 or 4 visits from different people in our studio to work with Bimal and others to see what is right. As soon as this was marked out, Srivatsan called and said, no, this is too big. This is, so we got different reactions. We began to fine-tune it. And so then we fine-tuned it by kind of moving it, actually making this circle much bigger so that we minimize the amount of paving, because that is an issue. You don't want too much paving. So that kind of calibration began to happen. Then we moved the circle further there to think of maybe creating a clear access. So when you walk through it, it's clear off the circle, because that might be being used, and it's closer to the Kanoria. The other thing that has happened here, which is very important, for the first time, a fire tender can actually come into the campus if there's a fire. That was never possible. Whether to bring in chairs for for a festival to bring in materials, but really for fire. This is for fire that you have an access that services Kanoria Center and this entire campus for the first time. This wasn't so these were the kinds of constraints that have also informed this. Then we said maybe a square. Everything is orthogonal here. Why are we doing a circle? Because everyone began to talk about Garba, but then we thought Garba is only 10 days, so why should it be a circle? Why not it can be a square? But then we went back to the circle and we did a hybrid, which is we made a bigger circle so there's less paving, but one segment of the circle will be paved over where it creates a clean access to the center. So you have a moment here where these coping bands become thicker, so it can also become a stage. It's a suggestion subtly for a stage if something is happening here, but it's just a different moment there on the circle. And that's sort of where we feel convinced about this. The other thing I want to point out is you see a footprint here in gray. That's the footprint of the library. And the last time I presented this, I had suggested it was really a brainstorming kind of exercise, that maybe the memory of the workshop, only because I had made like 7 or 8 models there, I was like emotional about it. I said it should be a different paving, so it suggests the plinth, so students might reconstruct it sometime or do something with it. And I had many other dialogues with, I think, Srivatsa. I'm sorry I'm referring you to all the time. You're all in the building committee also. So we had many dialogues about this, and he felt students would appreciate that. But it's there on the plan. But I'll say I kind of actually now strongly feel we don't need to remember it. We have those trees and the planters. I've spent 2 years studying the Kumbh Mela, and I was saying to Bimal, I'm going to actually start this presentation to the Kumbh Mela, because what the hell, if a city for 7 million people just lasts for 55 days and disappears, why are we worrying about these little forms of memory? You look at it in scale and in context, what does it mean? So I don't know. This is a debate. If people feel strongly about it, are willing to listen. I'm just putting my position that I feel after one has discussed it a great deal, that I'm not sure it's going to add so much value. The next batch that comes won't even know the workshop exists. They'll see a plinth and they'll wonder how these architects screwed up in the flooring pattern. So, I don't know why. So I don't know why you're even thinking of doing this. So I'm actually worrying about what they'll say about the flooring pattern and you guys. So we could maybe not pave that much and you guys enjoy it till you graduated and then we'll pave it. So that could be the way we deal with it. But it could also be, the green might be confusing to people. It could be compacted earth, but after the Garba season, that's what it'll look like anyway. It'll be compacted earth because the grass will go, and then you could have grass. That's a matter of detail. Now, in the details, we have studied these very carefully, and we are going to, on the ground plane, extend the existing details. We've started working drawings. We are using the proportions very accurately for the seats. Some things will be made by students at the Then the possible uses is important. You're a big school now. Convocation is a mess. So this is actually designed with seating all your parents for convocation. And I know Bimal, and I'll give him credit for this, as from before I started designing the library, he said, that thing has to have a photograph for the convention. Design the convention. So it's been very much about how students will get up and go up and receive their thing. We're planting a big tree here, so the people, the VIPs, will sit under a tree. It won't be a canopy. Symbolically, that will also be powerful with the library as a background, and it can accommodate a whole number of people. People can sit on these plinths and watch the convocation. You can cover the convocation with a beautiful tensile structure, so there can be a temporary installation under which the convocation can happen. So it's all calculated for the number of people and how things like this can actually be accommodated in the plaza, again as a long-term kind of thing. For Garba, it's a 30. We have many circles that can form. And the biggest circle will be 30 meters with many thing. And Bimal Patel from my team and Reshma, wherever she is from the building committee, were two who consulted with us very intensively about the practices of Garba and what might be appropriate. So this has been taken care of very, very seriously. And we can give you the numbers actually if you want at some point. But we also said a 20-meter cricket pitch can fit in that central space. So 22 meters, 20 meters that can all fit, so cricket can come back there. A volleyball court can fit in the center, and that can be dimensioned in there. Football goals with 32 meters goal to goal will fit, so for those of you who play football, and then students can actually do installations there. When you have your exercises for geodesic domes, things you make, we have just shown tensile structures, but there can be many other things. This can be a transformable space. So there's an element of surprise when you come onto the plaza. So we've studied that through both walking on site, but also three-dimensional models to understand what that experience will be, to unfold to the plaza, to feel that you're arriving at a campus and at the heart of a campus. And so these are all the studies. So this wall I hope will go, because this connection through this grove will be beautiful. We won't do planters here, because entering the Kanoria Center through a grove of trees will be a spectacular experience once that clutter is sort of removed. And the podium of the library with the Hutti Singh will also, these are the walls that I was talking about, they're voids. This will be the tree, the table for convocation will come on axis there, and you have steps there, you have a ramp, these are very comfy steps. And this whole amphitheater of the Hutti Singh is being reconfigured. Today we had a half-day meeting with their trustees and things to see what all can be done and what can be done with this office, how this can be integrated more porously with the campus. And I'm very hopeful in a month we might be able to post up some ideas of what might happen there. And then you look at that entrance area, there are also, so this is the workshop as you see, which now I feel is not adding so much value, but these trees and cedar, this will evolve, but this is the intention to do that. So the ramp is not this draconic thing that we've cleared everything. This is that little bit of the half circle, but you'll walk through it and there'll be people sitting here. These will be moments of encounter. There'll be trees with seating here. You go up these steps. This is a platform here. There's a planter there. So there's a lot that's going to be integrated, which will create, I hope, many more of these unprogrammed, intimate spaces where groups of people can sit. And so this is what these studies are about. Some of you have seen these chalk marks. We continue to fine-tune this till we hope we can get it right in the way this will be axial to it. And these are the platforms, or the ramp will come, you'll go into the administration building. And then, this is something that's open for discussion. But you begin to get many surfaces now, which can potentially be these surfaces, including right near the entrance, etc., which again, I think the school will have to have a policy on, and how we can do that. So in fact, all I'm saying is, yes, you could argue that something that existed for the expression wall should be what we imagine it. You come up, you see it. But now if you come as a main entrance from the other side and there are walls that you see, it'll be as powerful. So the attempt at least has been, nothing in design is finite. Everyone has an opinion. It's a subjective practice. But one hopes that one has been attentive. I thank the few people who have been productive in their inputs, including some of you, that we've tried to incorporate at least the potential for what is felt as a sense of loss, to weave it back in, to both do two things. One is to bring moments where you can express yourself, but also to bring simultaneously not monumental, but a very clear expression to the campus with its building and its existing assets. But within that, using the trees, using the level differences to create a sense of intimacy where you get a completely different grain, where groups of smaller people, if they sit there, they feel more comfortable. So how does one balance these two, I think, is what we are trying to attempt to do in the plaza, and I hope we can achieve it. So this is roughly what we have settled on now. And of course, there will be some fine-tuning as we go on, and how much is paved, how much is surface. This is what we are now fine-tuning with the help of the building committee to arrive at a final set of instructions for the construction of this. And just so in summary, I think the plaza became an extension of the library. I'm glad it happened, because it showed us also the potential of weaving all of this together. Why invest in such a big library and then have these disparate parts? But it also sets the basic armature, which will allow the other buildings in the many phases to sit more comfortably and relate to a center. And for that, I commend not only the building committee and Bimal for taking this initiative in doing this, but I really sincerely commend and thank a lot of you who have given us productive inputs. And I hope in the long run, this whole exercise at CEPT will set an example for architecture schools and the precedent of how, within a democracy, one can also respect the integrity of design. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Gurdev Sahab. Thank you, Rahul. Just heard a fantastic jazz performance, as one might say, and I for one certainly am pleased with the way things are going. I'm even more pleased that it's CEPT alums who are doing this work. So I'm sure many of you are happy about that too. I think next on the agenda is to take questions, suggestions, comments, anything you would like. I request you to pull up, Chirayu, can we pull up a couple of chairs and or just sit around, okay? And if I welcome all things, I will moderate. Everything, anything is welcome. Okay, when I mentioned the building committee, that's like the official building committee. We have one of is that clearer? Some of you attending one of the sessions before last time's semester ended. Much of the work that we are talking about has happened during the summer when Rahul has been able to come here. And yes, we will start those meetings again for the plaza and for the canteen. We will need to. So that's when you will start hearing about it. School has just commenced. People will be brought on board. I don't know about mails, but I do remember a meeting in which student representatives were present for the library building as well as for the plaza building. Okay, so what you are feeling is that the involvement of students can be more, and I respect that. Okay. No, there's. One second. There are two things that we do here for which we have inputs required. One is where we have for additions, repairs, alterations, etc. That's an ongoing process, and students have been coming in on that. There are singular projects, so there's lots happening on campus. There are singular projects for which people are brought in for discussions. Okay, so the library was something that happened earlier, and then after that the plaza has happened mainly during the summer, which is why it was put up on Facebook. And for the additions and things, I remember a number of building committee meetings where students were present, and the decisions for what to spend money on for additions and alterations was having their input. I hear what you are saying, that you would like to see more involvement, and let's see, we do that. Let's meet with the building committee and figure out specifics of who is going to be there, and I'll instruct the people who set up the meetings to ensure that they are well informed.
And I would just add, it's not too late.
Yeah.
It's very much possible to get those inputs.
Yeah.
Yeah, first of all, the expansions for the FT buildings and for the rest of the campus look excellent, and I'm very glad to see that. But in the short term, what retrofits are currently planned for the FT studios right now, and what is the mechanism that the students have to request additions in terms of infrastructure and modifications?
FT is Faculty of Technology. It's a student from the Faculty of Technology. I know that there have, I'll tell you what, last year, the most was an urgent list of problems was brought up by the FT people because their classrooms are really difficult to use. With the expansion of number of students coming in the first batch, the problem is going to a little bit worsen. So what we said was that at this point of time, there's very little really we can do because the problems are structural in that building. It's very difficult to improve it. So we said we are going to air condition most of the spaces. Now the budget for air conditioning, Reshma, Ben, you have to correct me if I'm wrong, came out to something over something like that would be what we would need for air conditioning. Now I'd very much like to do that, but the point is that we really plan to take down that FT building and build a new facility as fast as we can. Okay, and so we have, I think, already spent something like 70 to 80 lakh rupees on air conditioning, so that I believe the lower level spaces are all done, so the worst off spaces have been improved. Okay, so that there'll be some alleviation of the problem. I cannot promise you immediate improvements over the next 1 year. Even when I had a meeting with the Faculty of Technology just last week, the teachers had only one thing to say: what are you doing about this terrible building that we have to work in? And they wanted me, I said, there's one, we have spent 80 lakhs, do you want me to put in 1 crore more just now, or should we start looking at technology? So perhaps in the phasing, we try to bring the technology building up front. That FM building is actually much larger than it needs, and we might be able to do that. So I'm sorry, I'm sort of going around and basically not promising you anything more than that air conditioning that we have done right now. But like he said, we'll once again, we have a budget of about 3 crore rupees to spend over the next 1 year, I believe. And how that is to be spent, we'll have active student involvement in where the most urgent repairs are. I'm sure, after these things get fixed and after 3 years, everybody lose interest in the facility. But just now, because the needs are so big, I'll try and see that we have more student participation and activate it further, particularly for these sort of things. And for the library, it's more or less built, but for the workshop, and for the workshop is not constructed, and for the plaza, etc., we're still soliciting comments, so we can have that. But those are sort of. I'm going to ask something to these gentlemen here.
No, I think something.
Can you just tell us what faculty or whether
No,
it's faculty?
yeah, my name is Sachin Soni. Yeah, one of the younger faculties. So, I had question for Bimal. The first question for Bimal. All of you really mentioned about how trees kind of give this charming atmosphere to the campus, how they builds a certain kind of character. Wouldn't it possible, or I don't know whether there is a landscape or tree audit which has been done for the whole campus? I think it would be as a suggestion, because first phase, I think as Rahul's also pointed out in presentation, that he's taking care of those trees. But I think with the second, third and fourth phases, I think there has to be a very comprehensive tree or landscape audit which has to be done. I think that would also help to restore some of those trees, or to plant and plan out the landscape and for the future as well. So this is something which I think that would really add to the charm and the informal spaces and the qualities.
I think you're absolutely right. We do not have a systematic sort of a map of all the terrific special trees that we have. I think Deepa Maheshwari, faculty member in landscape, she's done a terrific book on compilation of great trees in Ahmedabad and where you can spot them. I think that's one of the first exercises we should take up, so that we have a map on campus of this.
Also the expansion plan for how do you plant trees.
Yeah.
And
So I was just going to add to that once this plaza is final, I think this we're on the podium of the library, we're definitely going to do a big tree, because we also want. But I think as those planters get defined as what is paved, and if it's too much paving, part of it becomes planters where we plant. So that will be the next stage, which I think that's the next layer, absolutely. And we're going to, because we want to minimize what might be hard surfaces unnecessarily. What is convenient for walking, that you don't get into slush and all, is important. But I can see those also becoming planting areas.
Yeah. The second part is for Rahul. Yeah. I think you also mentioned that even the dogs have an opinion of how building should be.
Not dogs, everyone and his dog.
Everyone
and his dog.
And dogs. But I think even pigeons do have the opinion. And I think one thing for the library, I don't know whether it is, we did not come out from your presentation. I think it's air conditioning, the core is air conditioned, but the kind of very interesting space which you have kind of, I think that might have problems of bird.
No, but we've already accommodated that in the mock-up. So there are 2 staggered zones of bird nets, which are fixed to the catwalk.
Wonderful.
And
Wonderful.
they'll be very much part of the paraphernalia.
Okay, good.
And also the louvers can be closed completely.
Yeah.
So you can close the louvers completely and no pigeons can come in unless they can navigate through the bridge and all that. It's possible.
Yeah.
But
Yeah,
it's a very good point and we took care of it.
Yeah,
Really did
yeah.
take care of it. Thanks.
Hello, yeah, I am from the 2005 batch, so I'm an alumni. Yeah, and I really personally appreciate the finesse and the detail with which things are documented and taken forward. Like when we came, I still do not know if it's true or not, but the 2 circles in the basement, the flooring patterns are the reminiscence of the kilns, of the brick kilns which we have had before. That's what, as far as I know.
Is that what they told you?
Yeah, that's what they told me. So, like you had those, like as Bimal mentioned in his presentation, that was those brick kilns. So that was the patti where the circle was.
Yeah, I don't know where you have seen circular kilns like that, but that's okay then.
Anyway, so no, the point was that if you even change the flooring that you suggested, I mean, it would add that layer of that this was their kind of a thing.
The workshop?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
What about the Amul?
Not really. I wasn't too
So you're
fond of it.
making that decision. I prefer the Amul
Okay.
thing. Yeah.
No, I mean, I'm sure it's... yeah.
But I think you hit on a point.
Yeah.
That what is the mechanism by which you make a consensus, or what is
Yeah,
collective
sure.
memory that is important to people? No.
Sure.
So it's a bigger discussion. It's more complex
I
than
mean,
that.
50 years down the line, they might say there was a workshop and, who told you that? Kind of a thing.
We'll do a guidebook. That might be better.
Anyway, thank you.
Hi, I am 1993 batch, so we have been on this campus since quite some time, and now I'm teaching at Faculty of Design. So the workshop, which is the building, we have actually worked in those workshop building, and I remember one incident when we were really tired, we were sitting on the whole night, we then basically slept on the steps, and Doshi sir came and basically woke us up, is this a place to sleep and all, but that was all right. And after I became the faculty, I was also a director for the workshops over here for a year. It is at that time we said, okay, let's remove this building. Because whether we like it or not, I'm very happy for the work that you have done for this entire thing, what has happened. It's not that I have a great nostalgia or something, but with the amount of the facade that you get, that building was a kind of an eyesore at this point, and it had to be removed in order to really tie up this entire plaza. So it's just an opinion that I'm very happy that this has been done. I don't think so you should even put the flooring pattern, right? Because memories are here, let them remain over here, right? Let's not embed them. Thank you.
What you solicited was pin drop silence.
Hello, I'm from the 2011 batch of Faculty of Technology, and I'd like to point out the point that you mentioned about accessibility for the disabled. And I only realized that once I broke my leg here and I had to move around campus, and it's treacherous, it's impossible, and it's very, very painful. So I hope that you replicate that for other buildings that are existing on campus, and even if you have to have lift or something like that, that'd be great.
No, I think that's a good point, and absolutely. And I think the new buildings for the library, this has been taken care of totally, because we also have an elevator that's been put in, because there are many levels to traverse to take care of exactly this. So at the plaza level, the fire tending and the handicap access became a big issue. And I think what Bimal and the building committee are going to do now is for every new building, they're going to insist that this is going to be a requirement. The question will be how you retrofit some of the existing buildings. And I think that will be the next phase in this whole process.
Just for your information, for this building, the FAFP building, Dilip Patel has already worked out a system whereby we can have one elevator installed in some place without sort of harming the architecture of the place, which we are going to put in so that the building becomes accessible, at least in that sort of a difficult way. But none of these were designed. As I said, there is a problem of both toilets as well as access for disabled people, and that's, putting it all in is going to require a lot of effort.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sankalp. I am teaching at Faculty of Architecture. So I must confess that I had written to Bimal about the plaza design, and especially with my concern was activity. And therefore the form that was sort of coming, and I had requested him that, how does one sort of take notice of all kinds of activity which the students are sort of using as of now, and therefore the shape. But what I sort of could be a part of discussion, but I still feel that the way it was presented, or even the next dimension of the circle which you sort of worked out, even it is 2 meter, unlike the earlier one, it sort of covers up the dimensions, okay, in terms of the sports activity I'm sort of talking about. So that was the first thing I checked the moment it was sort of laid down, because that was my concern. So thank you for that, at least that, yeah. I have a curiosity to ask to Gurdev sir, because the question that he was raising was about detailing, and especially the beam and use of laminate timber. And I was quite curious to ask the question, about the performance of the Canadian timber, if you were sort of trying to talk about that, because how does the temperature difference between one region and when we use organic material in another region, where for example in Ahmedabad it is 8 to say 48, 45 degree works? I mean, have you sort of tested it out?
I have looked at what is happening. What happen is that you got to deal the timber something like 11 to 12% of moisture content. And most of this timber, and they realize that when they're supplying this timber here, that is a problem. So most of the timber which comes in of a given size, they give a certain amount of coating on it to maintain the moisture in there. And then once it gets installed, they will be given another coating to kind of retain the moisture there. And generally what is done is the oils are used to preserve. The better the oil quality you use, which penetrates the skin and it retains the moisture. So it's possible. It's not that it's not possible, because the timber, most of the timber which you're using here in terms of teak and all that is coming from Indonesia and Burma. You're using it. Most of the doors and windows being done here these days. Most of the timber comes either from Africa or from the Indonesia. So you're not questioning that. It is. But how you treat the timber and how you protect it is an issue here. As long as you maintain about 11, 12 degree moisture in there, it works all right, and that will be done.
So for the architecture students, the biggest loss was the wood workshop, because it was totally taken care of by the students and it was totally handled by the students 24/7. So now we cannot argue on the fact that why is the new workshop placed there, but being an architecture student, the biggest problem we'll face now is the distance. So I would ask you as a suggestion to at least add a shaded walkway till the workshop, so that when it's raining we take our material. It's quite heavy models that we take. And last jury that we gave was in GIDC Bhavan, the final year jury. So we had to take 3 models to the GIDC Bhavan, and it was like a 3-hour task to take all the final work to GIDC, come back again. So it will be a quite nice addition to add a shaded walkway, even if not now, but in the future plan maybe. Because it will be quite a task to walk till the workshop with clay models and everything raining.
Number of,
No, I mean, I think in the final thing, because once the South Canteen comes, from that point, I mean, it can be a very simple covered walkway, like a pergola with planting. I mean, there are many ways you can do that, and I think it's worth considering it in the long term.
So, I mean, covered walkway from the ramp, starting from the ramp, going all the way.
Can be back way also.
Sorry?
It can be the back way also, the planning way.
From SID, take a covered.
No. The one that opens in the parking.
You know what can be done, okay? What's the priority? Okay, there are many. When you finally become an architect, and you have to carry your model to a client's place, you ain't going to have a covered walkway all the way. Okay.
But that time we'll have a car or something.
And I was the first one to admit. I mean, I don't know if Urvi Sheth is here.
So we can take a rickshaw if you are going to a client, but in the campus we cannot.
Well, you will. You know what? You will have to invent some way to do it. And if you are not creative about that, I don't know what sort of an architect you're going to make. So, I mean, I know 2 umbrellas, a rickshaw, a plastic bag, a portfolio. I don't know what. Figure that out. I mean, this is. I think we can do a walkway, and then a walkway to the canteen so that you don't have to get wet when you go there, and a walkway to the administration building, and a walkway here and a walkway there. I mean, come along, 1 second. Let's get priorities right about what needs to be done. What's more important, I think, in this question, I think the issue that was raised by the person is really the location. Okay? And Urvi Sheth, who is in charge of the workshop, and I mean, I really feel bad that finally we had to take a decision to locate the workshop where we have located it. Really, a school where we learn by making things, actually the library should be the workshop. I mean, instead of the library, that's where the workshop should be. That's really the location for a workshop. Perhaps we can turn it around. Do you want to?
It can easily be adapted, huh? And that would make a very nice library too.
So, at some point, and we need we need a library there also, we need the workshop there also, because that's really what should be drawing all the students in. Perhaps someday we will be able to do something below the paved area of the plaza, sort of an underground 2-level workshop of some sort that also solve the problem of walking long distances, but also become a symbolic gesture that this is the most important way in which we learn, by actually making. And so hopefully we'll do that, which is one reason why the workshop building had to be made as generic as flexible as possible, so that if later on it's converted into studios or if it is converted into research facilities, it can happen. It should be a space that can be air conditioned later on, so if we don't use it as a workshop, it is perhaps usable in some other way. So, let's understand many of these things are designed to be what they are, but everything changes as you go along, and let's not get tied up in these sort of things. But that's what it is. Anybody else?
Sir, you have shown in the presentation that 30-meter circle, which is like big enough for the Garba, football, cricket, and volleyball. You have shown, but with 1,500 students on the campus, it's not just one activity is happening on the ground at a time. There are sometimes 2-3 activities happening, and we have to go to the student services for booking the venue also. Okay. And it's not just the Garba, which is the festival. We celebrate the Navratri and Holi as well.
You've hit the nail on the head, so to say. Okay, with a campus of 2,500 people, that little space in the middle used to be perfect when there were 500 people here. Or when we were there, 200 people. That was perfect space. You could use it for all sorts of things. With a campus where you're going to eventually have 2,500 people, playing football there while everybody else is trying to study around you, etc., you cannot have everything happening in the center. We're going to need some sports facilities that are different from this. Okay, and I think I've mentioned on other occasions, I repeat once again, that the new sport, once again, that's a distance to walk, but nonetheless, it's there. There is the new sports facility coming up near the boys' hostel, where Ahmedabad Education Society is planning number of facilities there, including swimming pool, etc., etc. That's where really our sports facilities would be. The college that I studied in, you had to walk 10 minutes to get to the place, and sometimes to the swimming pool or the sports facilities, the gym there, etc. As things grow, you're not going to have everything in your proximity, and that's something that has to be kept in mind. We forget that life is going to have to change a little bit as we expand and we add more things, more people in programs.
So for that sports facility, we have to pay a lot. We have to even the CEPT students have to pay a lot for that sports facility.
That is certainly something we can work on. I didn't know about that, but I will work on that. Okay, because the arrangement with Ahmedabad Education Society is that it's a common facility for use between, and I've already asked Anita Ben and to talk with the Ahmedabad Education Society people and work out an agreement for our use, which is a long-term one. And this, fortunately for us, Ahmedabad Education Society is our parent organization, same as anybody else's. And this is a common facility that we are using.
Hello, myself Sanil Balani, and I'm a student of Faculty of Technology. I'm pursuing my master's over here. So all the facilities that you are going to build in the near future are really excellent. But I won't be there. That's a different thing. Yeah. But as Bimal sir said that by 2021 we are projecting the number of students to be approximately 2,500. And as per the plan, the FM building and the FT buildings are going to be constructed where right now there are parkings. So we are talking about increasing the student, but we have no plans to accommodate the vehicles or the parking problems over there. Right now, I am talking about a case on Monday. Monday has according to me, Monday has the maximum lectures in mornings. So entire crowd of the CEPT is alive on Monday. So when one of my friend has to park the car, so he was not getting space, and he parked the car outside before GIDC Bhavan, and that there is a road between GIDC and CEPT. So even if you are parking, it takes 10 minutes to take a car back and to go outside. So is there any provision of the parking coming up with increasing the number of students, or we are just increasing the spaces with no parking?
Should I, the one person on campus, the faculty member on campus, who really looks at parking issues and how, in the long run, our city as a whole is going to solve it. Forget about CEPT, but city as a whole, because the city as a whole cannot have parking for everybody in near proximity. That professor is Professor Rutul Joshi here. May I request you to... Well, you don't want to answer? Shall I say what you normally tell me? Okay. I'll say, he comes periodically to my office and says that providing free parking on campus is a crime. That you should be actually charging for that campus, because providing free parking encourages people to come in their cars. And there is no way for 2,500 students, even for a fraction of them, to provide car parking. So at some point, we are going to have to start charging. People are going to have to find other arrangements for how to get here. And there are many ways in which to do it. That's going to be the fact of life for every Ahmedabadi, so not just for you. And it's not something I'm imposing, it's something that sheer economics will impose. At some point, we are going to create a little bit of parking at the back. It's going to be a privilege, paid privilege, available first to faculty members and administration people on campus, then remaining to students. This is how colleges the world over function, so please don't feel bad about it. And the university that I went to had, it was a university with 30,000 people in the middle of the city and no parking space. Okay, 30,000 students. And they gave privileges to a few people to get free parking. Basically, you had to win a Nobel Prize. And there were 14 people on campus who had Nobel Prizes. So they got free parking right next to their building. Right, Renu? Am I correct about this? She also went to this.
Apologies for taking the mic again, but continuing the parking discussion, an idea that Rutul sir actually put into my head last year was that everyone should be encouraged to bring cycles to campus, and so the funds collected from this parking could go towards showers and changing rooms for those of us who actually take the trouble. So is that on the master plan, and is it possible as a part of the toilets to have maybe two
terrific
stalls?
suggestion, but you took the words out of my mouth. The first thing we want is a toilets.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get some decent toilets that don't feel ashamed of of having on campus. We'll do that. Yes, certainly. I think as we go ahead, look, plans, the expansion plans, and you must understand the things we are going to do in the near future are fast frozen. I mean, we are going to build that academic facilities building soon. Christopher's designing it. It's going to get done. As you go further down, the plan becomes less focused and a lot of things can change. So please let the suggestions keep coming, and we will put in things like this. Many of those programs, I mean, that FT building is a huge block. It's not needed. We could break it up into different things. Various things can be put in.
Thank you.
But also to say that I think it's fantastic that you are commissioning good architecture, and that's a very, very important thing. Lots of universities around the world failed significantly to do that, and I think it's just a testimony to you all that you've got this commissioning of excellent architecture right at the core. And I thought the comments about designing for ambiguity of spaces, unprogrammed spaces, and surfaces for expression really lie at the core of the presentations. And I wouldn't worry too much about the toilets myself. I think those values are wonderful.
Hi, I'm Renu. I'm a research fellow at one of the research centers here. I was just wondering, this is just a kind of throwing open suggestion. A couple of things that I heard was that, I mean, I think for a while when I first heard that the workshop might be demolished, I felt kind of, it should not happen, etc. Now I think I'm kind of okay with it. I don't even think that we necessarily need the tiles on the floor or whatever, the paving. But of course, there might be others who have different opinions. And I think that it's important for us to face the fact that issues of loss in whether it has to do with architecture, the way in which we transform our cities, these are important things that we need to engage with. We cannot just kind of brush them away. So whether it's that or whether it's this student's, concern about sort of getting wet in the rain with his models, etc., I think there might be certain issues that you might want to think about a way to set a system and process where, in place where you can at least engage with that question. There might be a way in which he may turn around a month later and say that, hey, it's okay, I'll carry my model in a plastic bag. But to kind of just brush that aside and say, you need to find a way to do it, I don't think that's the way to deal with the issue. Okay. That's just my personal sort of thing, and I wanted to put it out there. So maybe there are certain kind of questions, maybe there's an online way of doing this. Just have a way. I know that, as you said, this is a process that you put in place in an institution. You don't see this very often. You're doing it only since 2 years, and you're learning out of it. And this might just be one way to go forward on that.
So I'd like to make a comment about that, and let's. If this isn't that process of listening to people, I don't know what else can be. So to me, first and foremost, there's the earlier presentation that we had, what we talk when we put things up in Facebook, that is the process of listening to people. At some points, however, and I agree with you that we all get attached to things, we get sentimental about things, and loss in whatever form is something that hurts. All human beings are structured to be like that. People who feel a problem when they lose things. And I have a cousin who cried a lot when the old radio was sent out, etc., and later on learned to laugh about it, like you said about this sort of thing. So I think those feelings are real. But I think that's also sometimes the sort of expectations also have to be tailored down. And some of those things also need to be said, just in the same way that the loss needs to be heard. And this is that process of doing it, where you say, listen, come along, So that's I think, part of that dialogue. I don't think if we now need another one to do that. This is what it is. Okay? That's essentially, this is that dialogue, this is that engagement, where he says something about what he feels about wanting to walk, and I say what I feel about that expectation.
So I mean, you want to?
Can I just add one thing? I agree with you, this is the dialogue, but the other thing is ultimately that you are in a power of decision making. He is not. And in that process, the discussion that happens ends up being that this is my concern, and then the person who's in the chair of decision making says that, yeah, but and then it gets shoved aside. And of course, certain suggestions, you will take on board. I think as you mentioned, the plaza stuff, that is still open-ended. But I think that on certain, maybe not on every single issue, but there might be certain things that people feel a large section of people feel very strongly about it. It might be worth to just follow up on some of that. And as I said, maybe he'll come around thinking that, hey, I don't need that. But it has to come out of, I don't know. I'm just kind of opening something that I'm thinking about.
I'd like to take that on. I think it's very, I think you're right that there are two things that need to be kept in mind. When, as Rahul put it in his own way, when you have a group of people, they'll all have different preferences about how to do things. That's a fact of life. And however much we would like to feel that all of us will spontaneously come up with a consensus solution, we are not going to. All things in society are like that. All decisions are like that. Therefore, we need to create systems whereby somebody is empowered to take decisions. And we got to find good people to make systems for taking decisions. Okay? And so we have to find good architects, good planners, good whoever to take decisions at some point. Now, you are 100% right that this then puts those people in positions of power where they are the ones who are deciding. Therefore, it is always possible that they will not listen to people, and they will not get something, they will misuse their power. Okay? But the fact that you got to hand power over to somebody is unequivocal. You cannot then say, okay, you decide, but please decide in the way they decide, or they tell you to do. That's not what you do. What I ensure, and that's what we are trying to do here, is that he gets to hear everything. Okay? We get to hear everything. Okay? And that's what, in my view, a good situation is about. Finally, a decision has to be taken. And some people are going to be left dissatisfied with that decision. Okay? They also need to understand that somebody had to decide, and for better or for worse, I've got you, we've got you, building committee has got you, best possible people that can take decisions. Okay? And then those decisions have to be taken, and for better or for worse, we'll live with that. I think as a community, we are learning what that means. I've had to say this a number of times, that participation doesn't mean that you insist that what you say be done. Participation means that you be taken seriously. And I think if this is not taken seriously, well, we'll try to do better next time, but this is taking pretty seriously what you're saying. And that's really it. I acknowledge that they are in powerful situations, but I put them in positions where they have to face people.
So, my response to your comments, both your comments, would be that actually it's very important what you said, because you've in a way you've synthesized many aspects of this dialogue. But I would yet separate the two issues you raised as examples. I think the model thing I've heard for the first time. I mean, the workshop I've seen for the first time. I've heard the model question for the first time. And I think it's worth a discussion. And I think this is trigger off a discussion. And I'm confident from what I've seen. I can't promise it, but from what I've seen of the process, this will linger as a question till some solution is found. And it might not be from ramp to workshop covered walkway, because that's, and you might find ways to go partly through the administration building, come out somewhere, you have smaller stretches to do, the interior design people might also use the workshops, they have different accesses. It might mean straddling from the south canteen to the end, it could become a student project, there are many ways it could do, but it's actually very good you've surfaced it, and I think that's one part of the process you're talking about. Then I just will go back to the workshop, because you've actually bookended these. These are two extremes. One is a fresh thing that's come out, which has a practical kind of contingency to it, and the other is a lingering problem we've all been discussing. And then the archives become important. How you virtually capture that becomes important. How they don't make up stories that it was a brick kiln becomes important. So we could be doing many things in many mediums. You could actually do hard copy prints of the CEPT campus transformation. To use a simple word, a guidebook, so that guides don't make up stories. Or you could do virtual tours of the transformation, and we are capturing and documenting that. Those are ways also in today's world of capturing memory. I think that's what you were alluding to. And I think we've put a lot of effort in actually doing that. I hope we can compile it together and in terms of the overall documentation of the campus with the CEPT archives. And so there are many ways, and I think these are very important questions which must be put on the agenda generally.
Yeah, when you are capturing those memories and putting them somewhere, just remember that wasn't a workshop originally, as Krishna Ben reminded us. It was actually a construction office for or cement storage or something like that, whatever it was. So that's what we will put in. Okay, we have. Let me. Students have got chance. Let me get. Professor Feenstra, faculty member, Dean.
Thank you very much. I thought it was very inspiring. I have two questions. One is to Rahul. How does it work when you have a 30-meter diameter and you get 32 meters between the goals of the football pitch? How does that work? कोई बात नहीं. Next question is not about mathematics. It's about contact hours. How can we, and if I speak for the faculty and if I speak for the students of architecture, but I also think the students of faculty of technology or planning would be interested. How can we increase the amount of contact hours with you? With us? Yes, because with come to Mumbai? I'm serious. With contact hours, you learn. We have two very, very, very good architects sitting here, and I think we would like to spend more time with you. Don't take that. Sorry, I see quite a bit of Bimal. I should have maybe, anyway.
I'm asking you whether you meant two of us or two of us.
No, but seriously, I think for the students of architecture, what we have seen this evening was three very interesting bullet trains. It goes very fast. There's a very, very quick presentation of a very intense and a very deep thinking process. This is what we teach. This is what we would like to learn from you. So is it possible in some stage, and then I look at Bimal, to increase the honorarium of these architects to spend a little bit more time with us?
No, it comes free along with the fees that we pay them for these buildings. So you ask for it, and we'll arrange for additional visits, you know.
And I'm here a lot. I don't see you here. I want to answer that on a serious note. And I think you're right. And you know, one of the mandates that he had, at least for us, and I'm sure Gurdev has picked up on this too, is how does this building become a learning? That's why and the process itself. And of course, one is happy to do this. One is happy to do this if you have an architecture group, students of architecture, we want to talk about it. We come here very often from the studio, Robert Pal. We are here a lot, actually. We even come on our own sometimes for other things and spend time at CEPT. So we are very happy to engage. But you know, it can't be a lazy engagement. So in a sense, and I'm not saying you would do that, but this needs to be deliberately formatted. You know, for me to just come, or for one of my colleagues to just come and speak to students, that's not engagement. I mean, so you've got to formulate it around a lecture within a class, or a guided tour through the building once it's a little safer to go through it. Once the building is nearing completion, we're happy to take you there in smaller groups and talk to you. That was the intention of the building. And then with faculty, and that's one of the things that we're going to raise ourselves later, is to see how with student involvement we might learn from the building. So just the investment in the louvers, for example, is a very good way to learn with how that's not only made, but how that modulates light. Maybe we'll come up with a result that it fails completely, I hope not, but at least we begin to engage with. So there are many modes that and I'm sure it'll be the same with the library when the laminated trusses come in, when they're being built, the workshop, sorry, and all of that. So I thought we were interchanging it, but anyway, so when it's all built. So I think that process is something that you guys have to make an effort. I haven't had a request except from Arthur Duff, who said, cut some holes so we can look at it. I have not had a request from any architecture faculty that could you come and spend time with us, for example. No, so I'm happy to do that. No.
Lots of people have been asking, it's just not been passed on to you.
I think I'd just like to say that when we started, we thought that is going to be one of the very important criteria. We wanted to bring in issues like ferrocemento, using a whole lot of fabric and ceramic and tiles and things like that, where students will be involved. Bring in laminated timber in many places where students will be involved. But we have a very tight time schedule. That's the problem. And student involvement means if the seriousness doesn't come, it could delay, it could spoil the workmanship, which we can't afford because of the time constraint that we have. But still, I think we'll see how in the building process we can involve the students in certain ways.
Rajesh Shah from 1968 batch. I was extremely happy and glad and congratulate Bimal and his team and thank him for the transformation that is taking place in this place since last 4 years. I think we are moving more towards institution building through a very democratic process. After 4 years I am visiting this campus and this is my first meeting I am attending, and I'm extremely happy that those words that we started with in 4 years back has been translated actually in action. So I think it's a great thing, good process. I have never seen before when we were here as students. On the product side, this was on the process. Product side, I think some attention could be given or must have been given on water management in the campus, the total water management. Like Sachin was mentioning about trees, I think a lot more will have to be done on water, both rainwater as well as the sweet water, drinking water, and that could become part of the architectural solutions. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Absolutely right. We just take now, I think we can take 2 more.
Sri Krishna Iyer, 96 batch. Yeah, as I watched the presentation and listened to some of the feedback that came up, just a few observations. Dr. Patel started, or through his presentation, showed CEPT as bang in the middle of the city, part of the city, So this I cite to counter one of the questions that came up about the parking. I'm neither attempting to agree nor disagree with any of the things that have been said or shared, but this is reflective of what we think architecture to be or should be. I mean, if we see it as apart from life in general and the city we live in, it is situated in, then we are looking at it in isolation. Whereas if you do agree that it is part of your life and the city it is situated in, then yeah, CEPT Campus is not so many acres bit that is isolated, but it's part of it. So if you have a parking problem in the rest of the city, you have it here, and a solution that works elsewhere will work here, and quite likely it is being thought about. So if you think that your parking problem, your individual parking problem is not being attended to, I think you're just missing the picture. Other thing is to do with the disability access. I'm glad to hear that word in use again. Of late, the politically correct has been differently abled or some other more glib terminology, which I don't quite agree with. I mean, people are trying to be patronizing about, I mean, disabled, fine. If you broke your leg, if you don't have a leg, fine, why not? The thing is, this place, twice I came down here with not a broken leg, a twisted ankle once. The week I had my thesis viva right here, I had hurt my foot and I was helped by people, right? I was helped to reach here. I limped my way and gave the thing. It was done. So this thing about ramps everywhere, and well, it's become the norm. Yeah, hospitals fine, public buildings fine. This is a public building, but then some things, yeah, you depend on your next fellow. Why not? And again, same goes for these covered walkways. Yeah, 2 umbrellas. Model bases with simple wooden frame and just a plastic sheet stretched over. We used to do that. Later they did acrylic. Do something more. Have 4 guys carry a tarpaulin canopy or something. Yeah. Temporary and does it. Yeah, I'll just be through. And with regard to the workshop, yeah, proposals, counter proposals, paving. I'd rather, I mean, having heard all of that, I think it would be interesting. We live in a time when you designate a day for everything, Father's Day, Mother's Day, this day, that day. So you have a workshop remembrance day, and on that day, yeah, don't do anything with the paving, let it all be uniform, but you maybe just mark the corners or something, and yeah, and maybe with flowers, do a rangoli of the footprint of the workshop. Remember it. Maybe I've even seen somewhere a proposal where a building that was removed was remembered with just a frame of the outline in pristine stainless steel. Yeah, do that. Yeah, make a temporary structure. Be done with it. Remember it for a day. Weep and yeah, carry on.
Thank you. I was really wondering where you were headed, but that was a terrific.
Generally, I'm headed nowhere.
But
generally, I'm headed nowhere.
That's a terrific suggestion, and I'm glad you're a CEPT alum.
I am.
Okay,
I have much to do with the school because that was what my thesis was on.
Okay.
So,
thank you very much. Okay, one last one. Somebody from whichever corner that has not, that woman there has been putting her hand up for a long time. Yes, please. That's you.
Hello.
Read out of it.
Yeah, I'm Harsh from 2010 batch, and
the mic only.
Yeah. So my question is to Rahul, and in your presentation you showed about like the freedom of expression in terms of painting happening over the plinths but there was no such experiment on the buildings which are being developed new. So is there I mean, it's a general question, I'm not suggesting it should be done, but are the new buildings that sacred enough, unlike the modern heritage we have here where you could paint? It's just an open question. What are your thoughts about that?
I'll answer that on some things that I'm going to touch upon to end the thing. So I will hold your question if you don't mind. Yeah, thank you.
Good evening. I personally appreciate the proposed connection towards the Kanoria Center, but my question is about when we are talking about modern heritage, then I think Canteen was none less than the modern heritage. And when we are studying in a CEPT university where we are having a heritage and conservation faculty, then is this how we deal with modern heritage? Is it the only solution to demolish it, or?
Why do you think it was modern heritage?
Like we used to learn many things, and also we have seen that place working in a efficient manner, and even the proposed canteen area, which was supposed to be efficient enough, like it was 8 by 10 and the proposed one is a 10 by 12. So what was your criteria for demolishing the canteen?
Well, one was to consolidate things. The other was that the facilities here with all the ancillary facilities for the kitchen, etc., are much bigger. Integration of gas banks, integration of all the allied services is much bigger. We tried looking at that plan to retrofit it, and it wasn't. Now, what is the bigger question is what is modern heritage? No, so we can, unless you can answer that, you can like the canteen, I can like the workshop, we can. But what do you define as what is modern heritage? So that you can't use that term loosely is my point. I mean, I think the buildings designed by Professor Doshi, of course, have an incredible legacy for not only what they do. The justification is much greater, both in terms of its architectural articulation, its moment of articulation at a particular moment in time, the stature of Professor Doshi as an architect. So there are many criteria that go to defining what can become a basis, a common denominator that we can build a consensus on what is modern heritage. So in my view, and this is something one has studied, I don't think the canteen would qualify for that. I mean, I had great respect for Professor Varki. I struggled with trying to look at how we could retrofit it. We had many discussions about that. But finally, this is all a matter of trade-offs for long-term efficiency. So that's really the reason. And also the ability to integrate all the other allied facilities. That was not possible in the original one.
I'd like to, I think that's very important, how we define heritage, and that's something that has to be shared. There's two things he said that are important. One is about how we define heritage. Can't be just because somebody has done one building, all buildings done by that person are heritage. Okay? The Faculty of Technology building is also by Professor Doshi. The Hatti Singh Visual Arts Center is also by Professor Doshi. I don't think you would put it in the same category as the building that is on the other side. There's simply no comparison between the two. Perhaps that was a bad moment. Perhaps that was... So that's one issue. The second is really trade-offs. You really have, for the best of things, you sometimes give up, you give up sometimes the best of things when there is no alternative to that. And you find, as I think Rahul said, other ways of cherishing the memory of that person. Okay? I'll tell you, for example, one thing that I've been trying to do and have been impossible for me to find is to find all the lecture notes and all the learning material of Professor Varki. This was celebrated stuff. Everybody used to talk about it. I want to put it in the archive. I find that nobody took care of any of that over the period of time that just after Professor Varkey died. I don't know where that stuff is. So I think that would have been a very fitting way in which to celebrate his memory and to say and to keep forever. I think we have, that would have been easier to store. That would have been a fitting remembrance of an academic who was here. And I don't see any of it. Okay? And in fact, at CEPT, we have been so terrible at celebrating anybody's memories that I do not understand when people sometimes rake up this discussion. Do I find in CEPT old curriculums, old papers of what, CEPT is 50 years old. And perhaps, stellar people, Bernard Cohn who was here, I find nothing. You were here at that time. What do you find from Bernard Cohn? Either in the library or in the, Professor Varkey was here. What do you find in the library about this person? So all those people who talk about memories only through buildings, I'd say please expand your vision a little bit. Okay? So I'd just like to add that, and sorry for being a little forceful about this, but it does hurt me that when when we set up CEPT archives and we said, let me find the stuff I can put here, there's nothing. And those same people who were in charge of things at that time talk about memories. I don't know how they have how they can sincerely talk about that. So that's not directly to your question, but extending it a little bit because I know where it's coming from. Two things, and then I just want to say one.
Yeah, no, I just want to. Arthur, you had I just wanted to take a minute, and I was just saying to Bimal that I want to create a continuity between the last presentation and this one, and therefore your question I'll come to as part of that, because one of the exercise my colleagues did was we looked at that video before we made this presentation just to make sure that we had hit on all the suggestions that had been made. We had about 8 questions we finally typed up, listening and transcribed from the video. There was a 9th question which we just didn't understand. Even in order to transcribe it, it was very vague. So I'm sorry whoever asked that question. I remember the person who asked that question. I won't embarrass him. But the other questions, the 8 questions, had to do with, one question had to do with why not explore a high-rise option, which of course and I'm sure there's a consensus here that we don't want to. So that was put aside by us. There were 2 questions that had to do with too much light. Parul, Nimish, there were a number of people who asked that question. And that time we had an open facade, and therefore that was one reason we extended the budget to include the louvers, also for purposes of climatic change, and he was very kind to do that. But that, I think, helps us modulate the light. We've added some skylights in places again to modulate it. So that we feel we have addressed adequately. There was a question about the introverted nature of the building. Why is it, and when, at least I, as an architect, believe strongly, I'm sure there's a consensus that a library must be introverted. It is about close, and therefore the reading rooms were increased so that becomes the extroverted space, at least in terms of views, where people can decide what they want to. So it has actually both those qualities in some sense. So that was the other question. For any of you who might see this, I just want to go through this. Of course, there were 2 questions about nostalgia, which had to do with the workshop, which we've adequately addressed. Looking at other mediums to capture this is one of the things that has come out of this. And then there was a question about what happens when this library shifts to the new building, and I think, Bimal, you had answered that. It'll get accommodated as part of the studios, classrooms, and that's part of the master plan. And the last question, which is why I come back to you and asked you to hold it, was that would there be spaces within the library building that students can paint? And you're not asking it so specifically, but there was a question that can they paint and things, and I'm like, quite clearly saying no, in a sense. But what we have done is we have created the whole ground floor. When you enter, is an unprogrammed space. So it can be juries, it can be exhibitions, it can be things that there has to be a protocol set up for it where students might be able to book it to do things, which becomes another form of expression. And so what we identified in the presentation were just walls, because these are walls which are, I believe, and this is my own view, you all might disagree, that the brick walls that you have posters on, I remember it was only during the festival, and it used to be put with glue made out of wheat and things so that it could be removed very easily. Now it's become become a permanent figure. I think that defaces those buildings. I think we have to respect buildings where the architectural integrity has been put with so much premium. And therefore these interstitial spaces are spaces that can get appropriated. So whether they are retaining walls, whether it was in the case of the workshop and the library could have, the canteen could have some spaces like that. But I think buildings that are common shared assets, I think for a small group of people to appropriate it in that way, in such a powerful way, I don't believe is the correct thing in an architecture school. And so it's these ancillary spaces that would do that. But the way we've interpreted it is to create a covered, ambiguous, unprogrammed space on the ground floor of the library, so they can be programmed, unprogrammed events there that might help answer some of those questions. So
Okay. So if you don't mind, we close the event, but I would like to say just one thing. That last bit I think points to the direction how serious these interactions are. People listen. The job is to create situation where the architect in some sense is required to, forced to listen to what people have to say, and then we have to create the space for him along with the key people responsible for making the building to take decisions. I understand that this process is not possible without opening up to that sort of suggestion, also not possible without you interacting and believing in the process. My request is that you continue to believe in the process, and as we go forward, we build a culture of talking about things as they happen, and telling each other what's happening here, and making thereby the culture of this place rich, not just in its architecture but also in its dynamics in some way. So with that, I'd like to close today's session. Gurdev Sahib, anything? Okay. With that, I'd close today's session. Thank you very much. We will be, the suggestion about getting students more actively involved in the committees, that's something that I take away from here as an immediate thing. And we will be having another session down the line, maybe 2 months down the line, when we'll request Professor Christopher Benninger to talk about the new facility that he is designing for the academic facilities building. Thank you very much.